They're going to get side by side again. Last time it didn't quite work. Can he make it stick this time? He's not fully passed, but he held on as they swing back in. A little bit of car contact between them. That sends him out. Topi's going to pounce on it. He's going to try and take that second place back as it goes through Brooklyn's tires spinning up as Simone is not willing to give way. He's got the inside back and through, more side-to-side contact between he and his rival. Somehow they come out the other side, but it's still not done, DJ. It's down to cops they go.
Oh, it's really close. Here we go. It's Galindo. He tries to make the move on U-Bluth as they send Hideki Koivisto flying.
Koivisto manages not to hit the wall. I think he's going to be okay, but he's not going to be happy about that.
Galindo, he's going for a braking move on Fabian U-Bluth. He's going to send it deep into turn 7. He's going to be on the inside as they head around the corner. He should have the position, but U-Bluth holds out. They're going to go side by side as they go into the S's.
Oh, can he get this done finally? Chucks it in, but he goes a little too deep. Coming back at him. Here comes Ljungblad trying to take this fourth away. Again, this will tie the points lead. If Aitor can get past him, they're going to run together. Little bit of contact, splitting either side of Marco Lay. Who's going to win the battle down into the braking of the hairpin?
Well, and let's take a look at that. That may have been a mistake there from Jeff Schmeier going for the move. How he kept that out of the side of the number 220 is beyond belief, but amazing car control there from the number 30.
Not close enough to Timo for this lap by. Oh, but look into the first corner. That's for the lead. Korteniemi on the attack on Partanen, but he's going to be vulnerable as Simone sees the chance. Now that he's slow off the corner, swings around him, and he is through down into Maggots and Beckett's.
And this is where things get extremely complicated. He's going to try and go on the outside, gets pushed out wide into the grass, loses it, and now we're all along for the ride.
Whoa! I know there's a rallycross course here, but this car's not made for that. And he got air, all four wheels off the ground, still kept it out of the barrier and brought it back. That's going to likely cause a little damage to the car regardless, but great heads up by the 16.
He's going to have to go the long way around the left-handed sweeper here. Is he going to be ahead by the time they get into the braking zone? Are we going to see side-by-side for 2 successive laps going through Moss? Little bit of maybe contact there for Ozowski, bumping and banging, banging and bumping as they exit the corner.
Luis Nunez tries to cover it off then. It's going to try and pinch and pinch and pinch as they go towards turn 1, but he'll get just about what he needs. Oh, he has a big moment in the middle, and up and under Jukka Tolonen, experience prevailing.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ride around the world.
I'm Mick Claridge, and I'm going to ride around the world on my bike.
My son, he gave me advice at the start of this ride, and he looked at me and just said, "Dad, don't be a moron."
Let me do my animal signal to gain their respect.
How's it going, Sally?
Yeah, I'm alright, Mick. How's it going?
Worse than that bit in Lord of the Rings, where they go into the top and the spiders in the tunnel. I'm just hoping there's a spider at the top of this one to kill me. Freezing.
And I failed. I moroned up the ride.
Championship decided. 1 round still to race. The aim of the game is simple, and that is to take the final bragging right of the season. No longer in the real world as the final stop on the NASCAR's Tour of the States, it still plays as our host to our final stop on a long and arduous season. It's a championship finale for the European Major Series Homestead Miami Speedway with the next generation of Fords, Toyotas and Chevrolets, and it's live here on the Global SimRacing channel. Good morning, good afternoon, and evening, race fans around the world. I'm Jake Sperry, bringing you all the action here today. Christian Challoner is alongside me with Zach Johnson, directing using the cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Homestead stands out as somewhat from most of the 1.5-mile circuits in the American oval scene, and we'll tell you why, thanks to our GSRC track guide.
The track boom of the 1990s in recovery after the devastating Hurricane Andrew brought this gem of a southern Florida track. It started out a bit rough. In 1995, the initial layout was like a smaller Indianapolis. Really didn't work. Slow, narrow, passing was near impossible, so they widened the track. That brought out a larger problem of crashing. They tore up the corners and made it into a traditional oval. Racing improved greatly, and in 2002, NASCAR moved all of their top-tier series finales to South Florida, and they would stay there for 17 years. Each end of the racetrack produces multi-group racing and passing opportunities. The approach to turns 1 and 2 has produced numerous race-changing moments over the years, as it just invites you to make a move. You hit that 18 to 20 degree progressively banked corner, and it becomes a matter of who can get it back on the gas faster as you hit the backstretch and the row of palm trees that awaits you. Turns 3 and 4 are just as multi-grooved, although a few small bumps in the low lane make the high line just a little more appealing. Even then, guys will use that low lane for a challenge that could last all the way to the checkered flag. Nowadays, Homestead's biggest customers on the oval are NASCAR vehicles. The trucks, B-Class, and Cup cars all make trips here and put on fantastic shows. USAC Silver Crowns raced here as well, and that often shows up on iRacing's official calendar for that car. Welcome to Homestead Miami Speedway, where the racing action is just as hot as those South Miami beaches.
Well, that was a bit of an understanding about what Homestead Miami Speedway is all about. And Christian, this is the sort of track which, over the years after its inception in 1995, has made itself one of the staples of the oval racing scene. What really does set apart this circuit from all the other styles of circuit that are out there when it comes to the open wheel in the United States?
Well, it's interesting because it did start out as actually kind of a fairly boring oval at one point, and it was reconfigured into this mile-and-a-half track, which is arguably the best mile-and-a-half racetrack that the NASCAR schedule goes to. Progressive banking in the turns 18 to 20 degrees. Obviously, it is a mile-and-a-half, as everybody knows, but it is one of the ones that races the best out of any, I think. I think today we're going to see a lot of cars running down by the white line, which is actually where I kind of prefer to run this place too. But you can run up against the wall for a little bit of a kind of an exit drive off and gain a little bit down straightaways if you need to. So expect restarts will be pretty exciting here, even though we only have just over 14 cars, which is a little bit of a shame because this track really does kind of make for the best racing, I would say, in the next gen, and to be honest, with pretty much any oval car on iRacing.
It certainly does, and I'm sure we're going to see drivers pushing to the absolute limits here today to try and find that victory. But let's talk the championship, because we know that it's wrapped up with a nice, neat bow. Dallas Pataska, 2,433 points, uncatchable there to Trevor Vavrovsky in second position. Sean Campbell there in third, 387 points back. But what is going to be key today is the likes of Ross Banfield will be looking to should jump up over into that third position ahead in fourth position. David Melnarovic will also be looking for points. He's there in fifth with David H. Baker in sixth position, just 60 points back of that. Ryan Walker is seventh with Travis Henderson in eighth. We'll keep an eye out on that so long as the season goes forward. Joshua Wolf in ninth for Grizzly TFR Le Mans and just 2 points back. Cordell Cologne in 10th position. So the Grizzly cars, 6 of them inside the top 10. They're having a good season. Sportsman, though, Christian, it's a little bit different. We're not going to be seeing what they're doing today, but what we can definitely say is it's a very, very close championship.
Yeah, and I'm honestly a little bit disappointed that we haven't got a merged race like we had last time out at Daytona, because I thought that worked really, really well. And our number one driver in the Sportsman standings, Brian Boomsma, he was the fastest driver the last time out as well. It just unfortunately didn't play out for him in the race. But in terms of his championship standings in Sportsman, he's got a 66-point lead over Garen Batten, Now, that is going to be very, very difficult to overhaul. I'm actually not even sure if it's going to be possible to overhaul that for Baton unless something absolutely disastrous happens for Boomsma. But yeah, it is obviously still possible in that championship. And then we've got Alexander Wenger. He's 111 points off the lead. He's kind of in no man's land as well in that third spot. He's got also about a 66-point gap back to fourth place, Edward Shelley in the NRG Racing ES car. So 3 of those in the top 4. And then Daniel Holmer, he's 20 points back. There may be a possibility he can snatch that 4th spot today. And then Daniel Blomqvist, he's in another spot of no man's land in 6th spot. He's probably got that sewn up. Then we've got Hackenschott, Alexander Olsen, Jan Brony, and Sam Swallow to round out the top 10 in Sportsman.
So that's how Sportsman all finds itself out. Now, the Legends standings overall, well, that's a runaway standing because there's only been one full-time driver, and we don't expect that to change. So David H. Baker has that wrapped up in a nice, neat bow ahead of Mark Redford by 1,309 points. Mario Schroer, Armando Galliana, and Thomas Geisler, their 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Not much really to speak of there. That's all sorting itself out in the early stages of the season then, Christian.
Yeah, and Legends Sport is a little bit of what we saw already in Sportsman. It's Hackenschott and Jan Brony, only this time they're fighting for that 1st spot. Again, 76 points. It's going to be really, really difficult for Brony to overhaul that. And it is really between those 2 drivers. There is no chance really for Wolf Dietrich Hotto to get into that battle. He is significantly too far back. But he does only have 20 points over Gary Thomas, so that one could swap around. And then, you know, we've got to go back to 5th and 6th. They're pretty locked in. Michael Hagstrom, 486 off the lead, but with about 100 either side of him to Claude Belvelle. And then Stefan Wang, Andy Banfield, Simon Torns, and then Nicholas Gran round out the top 10 in Legends Sport.
So over to the Pro Team standings then. Satellite Racing have that all but locked up ahead of Grizzly TFR Le Mans, 333 points. The difference maker there with Grizzly TFR Daytona confirmed then in 3rd position, 1,405 points adrift. Apex Tech Racing Pro had a promising start to the season, but with a lack of attendance, they've fallen back to 4th position, but they're comfortable ahead of Udox Oliver, who move ahead of Team Mad and are expected to stay there. RSR by Butt Kicker find themselves in 7th, the Lear Racing Team in 8th, Sapphire Simsport in 9th position, and NSH Racing Team don't expect much movement, but it is very close between those 3 teams in 8th, 9th, and 10th position. And over to the Sport Team standings, Christian.
Yeah, and it's very, very close in Sport Team standings for the overall victory, actually. Bright Esports and NRG Racing ES, the 2 teams who kind of locked out the vast majority of the top 10 in the drivers' standings, are the 2 going for it. And with just 28 points between them, I mean, that could come down to just one driver having a bad day. It could flip it around for either of them. So that's going to be very, very tight. And I think that's probably the closest battle we have in terms of the sportsmen and the sport teams overall. HW Racing back there in 3rd spot. They've got that locked up from Grizzly TFR Spa. There's, you know, a close-ish battle there between Grizzly TFR Spa and Black Tree Race Crew. There's only 26 points, but it's for 4th, so it's definitely not as critical as that battle for the championship there. And then back in 6th spot, we've got Hanson Brothers Racing. They've got a significant gap over V Apex, who themselves have a significant gap over Bright Esports by Glacial. And then 9th and 10th is No Emission Motorsports and Dart Frogs Racing.
So that's how all of the standings look then here today. A very, very important race in front. This is the final round of the championship, round 14 of 14. So that's going to be worth keeping an eye out on. 267 laps today. It's the full 400 miles that we're jumping in on in the NASCAR Next Gen Cup cars as they go through. So an open setup. Everyone's got to try and work out what's the best that they go through. There is a 30x instant point limit. And, of course, one spare car to go through. Overrules applied. Cautions will be flying if drivers do go around over the course of this race. But with a reduced field here today, I doubt we'll see too many of those in the offing out there. And this should be a very interesting battle that we should be keeping an eye out on. There were a couple of things worth keeping a track of, and it does involve you, Christian, as well here today with racing, because the pro playoffs actually have an interesting scenario on it, because you're 3 points back of Dallas Pataska right now.
Oh, I am? To be honest, the Pro playoffs is not really the standings that I kind of pay too much attention to, and I know Mike's probably out there kind of wincing at hearing me say that, but the reason for that is it's just so difficult to compare across regions and whatnot. You never know when you're going to get a strong race in one region and a little bit weaker in another. So I know we do obviously have that coming up. I'm unsure if I'm even going to partake in that. I have mixed feelings on the whole pro playoffs for the major series because I've typically not been a fan of what the final round to decide that is, because I feel like it always heavily skews in favor of very niche disciplines, which I understand. The reason behind that is obviously they're trying to kind of compress down to the races where you can only have, say, 10-15 cars at the end rather than have them at the beginning and deal with 30-odd drivers. It's very difficult to do that, but yeah, to be honest, it's not one that I've ever really been too excited about, but I might actually have to keep an eye on that. I think it's going to be difficult to overhaul Dallas today, though, because if Dallas wins this race, and I think there's a fairly high likelihood of that happening, I think I got my work cut out for me tonight. I've got to go up against Nick Ottinger, who's been driving the car the entire season. And yeah, I know this is what I used to do, but I haven't raced competitively in the next gen at all, really. So I don't fancy my chances tonight.
Well, dust off the cobwebs, Christian, because I'm sure you're going to be in for one over today. Let's take a look at the starting grid then, see how everybody qualified themselves over the course of action. Alexander Russell then will take the pole as he will look to move forward and put a good start to this one. Mark Stevenson will be alongside on that front row. Row 2 will consist of Ross Banfield and David H. Baker in 4th position, with Adam Fatcher-Ponti 5th and Dallas Pataska having to get it done today from the 3rd row in 6th position. Gabriel Roos will line up 7th with Travis Henderson in 8th. Adam State will go from 9th, and Treva Favrovsky rounds out the top 10. We'll flip over the page, just 2 more rows to go through. Ryan Walker will go from 11th alongside Tom Dreiling, and the final row will consist of David Melnarovich and Cordell Cologne, making the 14 drivers here today looking to put racing on overall. I was a little bit disappointed. We could have had a 28 car field there or thereabouts if we had sportsmen in and involved, and I thought that would have been a really interesting dynamic to see it. But with these 14, Christian, the question has to be asked. It's a lot different when you're running with 14 cars than you are, say, when you're running with 25, 30, 35 when you're out there. There's different strategies in play, and you've got a lot less really troubling you in terms of when you're out there driving than you would do normally. So for those who have that oval understanding, who deal with full grids all the time, does this suddenly become a different dynamic?
Yeah, I think it does. Obviously, with so few cars out there, there's a lot less strategy jeopardy, so you're not going to be worried too much about pitting on a caution as to cycling you back into the pack, because, well, it's not really going to. The pack is so small anyway, and you think if you even pull 3 or 4 cars down with you, you're only back there on row 5. So it's definitely a lot less jeopardy. I agree totally. I would have loved to see 28 cars out here today. And, looking at the qualifying times for sportsmen, Pole and Sportsman would have lined up 2nd on the grid here today. So I feel like there was no real reason not to merge those.
Well, these drivers know that this is going to be an important race out there. It's a long race, 267 laps. And as a finale circuit, there is not much that you can argue with. Pace car will dive down in left as we get ourselves ready. Green flag in the air, and the jump absolutely fantastic by Alexander Russell. He storms forward off of that start, got it absolutely perfect and straight to the inside. Then we'll go Ross Banfield in the Udox Oliver car, moving up into 2nd position, catching Mark Stevenson unawares, the Canadian, as we get ourselves through 1 and 2 for the first time here today at Homestead, Miami.
You see Stevenson go immediately down to that white line, and I feel like that's where we're going to see the majority of people running today. As we see the 27 is actually coming to pit road at 51.
Yeah, they're both in. They've got the black flag, so that would be for a jump start. It was so good that they've decided, nope, you went too quickly, and ultimately they get caught out. So they have to go take the penalty early, and because that's under green flag conditions, they're going to be a long way back. So the shuffling now changes. Ross Banfield now your leader. Thatcher Ponte under pressure for second, because here's Dallas Pataska getting 2 freebies early on, going down to that low side, getting that sorted, and may, just may, go for the race lead here, coming out to 4, looking for that drive. Not going to get there with Ross Banfield getting that run off the exit, but already it is pretty much going to be about what can you do. Fastest lap, Dallas Pataska's, as he again goes low, searching for the race lead.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be pretty difficult for him to easily clear it, but if he can get to the quarter here and pull Banfield back on the straight, he's not been able to do it this time, then that's really going to kill that topside run that Banfield's getting. And the other thing is, with running up there and you know, you're running out of the groove, so to speak, so there's a lot more tire wear because of that, and that's really the disadvantage of running the top side of the track. It's not the pace, it's really how aggressive it is on the tires.
It is going to be aggressive on the tyres because you are taking a longer track around this circuit, which does make life a bit more difficult. This might be the clearance needed then on that low side by one Dallas Pataska, and it is. So enough to move up to the race lead, but suddenly switching back down low, looking for this move, is Ross Banfield. Now remember, you had a horrible start on the ovals at Daytona, but it looks like he's getting better and better as this season goes on, as they continue to go too wide. We're talking track conditions here today. We haven't had the chance to really talk about it here, Christian, but it is a sweltering 41-degree track temperature. It's hot. We're in the middle of the Miami sun here in Florida. This is not ideal for the tires.
Yeah, and this place is kind of inherently a tire chewer anyway, so we are going to see some strategy plays in terms of how hard do you run at the beginning of the race and whatnot. And to be honest, I feel like at the moment the front of the field is not using as much pace as they actually have. They haven't really broken away as quick as their practice and qualifying pace would suggest. So I do think there's going to be a lot of tire management today. That is going to kind of bleed off a little bit as we kind of get into the cooler hours of the race. As track temperature comes down and the rubber state goes up, that's going to really help tire wear. But certainly beginning of the race, you do want to be a little bit conservative. There's just no real benefit in running the car really hard.
Well, Tom Dreiling actually missed the start by about 4 laps. So he's 4 laps down already in this one as they race now for second position. Travis Henderson now looking to make a move to the inside of Ross Banfield, getting nice and low right up to that white apron line through 1 and 2, looking to get the drive migrating up the circuit off of the exit. Banfield getting very tight to that outside wall and trying to continue running that groove up. And some drivers are going to like running that high line, and the more drivers that do go up there and do work that, iRacing's dynamic track system will come into play, and that line will soon move and migrate up from the bottom line, which everyone's using, as the rubber gets put down on the track.
Yeah, that's really the thing, to make the top line not really hurt the tires. You've got to have a bunch of people running up there with you and kind of rubbering in that groove, and unless that happens, then you know, it's going to have the pace, but the problem is you're just going to be at a bit of a tire wear disadvantage. So at the moment, the majority of the field is running the bottom of the track. The middle is pretty much expected to be no man's land at this place, and that's you know, true to reality. But I would like to see a couple more cars up at the top of the track. And one interesting thing is that our 2 jump starters at the beginning of the race, Mark Stevenson, he immediately went 1 lap down. It's coming out at the tail end of the field, but Alexander Russell has actually managed to avoid that. So I'm wondering if Stevenson actually took pit service whilst he was taking his penalty, and that's why he's ended up being a lap down, while Russell has stayed on the lead lap.
Yeah, it's very weird there, but Alexander Russell, I think, has got away with it a little bit more than the others. Still there on that outside, and now having maybe to fall into line, it's Travis Henderson, who finds himself in no man's land through the middle of the corner there. Wasn't sure to go down to the bottom or not, and that's going to bring Adam Thatcher Ponte then into play in the 150, who dropped back quite dramatically over the first couple of laps, but was able to pull back into line. Got a bit of too wide behind as well. Gabriel Roos on the inside. You got Adam State, sorry, on the inside as they go through now. Another car jumping down in towards the pits. That'll be Tom Dreiling again, who's already 4 laps down. So that's going to be no dramas at all. That's the early stages then of this race, just finding themselves into play. But couple of battles out there. So you got Roos and now David H. Baker going through. Thatcher Ponte still having a look for that move, trying to get that one sorted into third, but again, just having to play the patience game, just having to wait behind.
Yeah, and I don't think there's too much sense in racing too hard at the beginning of the race here. You know, it's such a long race anyway, and a single caution will remove any advantage that you're able to gain. So there's not much sense in being extremely aggressive, but it is a time to kind of figure out what does and doesn't work in terms of making passes. When you know you're not gonna really lose out long term if you kind of drop 2 or 3 spots here. It's no big deal. If you drop 2 or 3 spots making a move for the first time with 10 to go, well, that's a bit more frustrating.
Yeah, it very much can be. As they go through, there is the number 23 machine of Dallas Pataska leading this race out from the front. And just looking at the drop-off then, it's about 1/10 of a second every single lap here, Christian. The fastest lap was a 33.3. That's now down already to a 33.7 here on lap 13. It does show you how much gap is going as second position on back now. Going to drop a second here as Ross Banfield, and he's going to be looked at on the inside by Travis Henderson, who's had enough time sitting and waiting. Is going to go to that low side to get it going forward. And if you're running that high side early and you deal with understeer, you're having to scrub so much more as you go into the corner. You can carry a lot more initially, but you still have to do a lot more scrubbing when it comes to the mid-speed of the corner.
Yeah, so when it comes down to it, a raw lap time is basically generated off of keeping the right front on the car. And if you do that, then the inherent pace is there. But the trick with that is you've got to make sure that while you're keeping the right front on, you're not being ridiculously aggressive in terms of burning off the right rear, because you might be able to roll through the corner real good if your right front's still pretty fresh, but if the right rear is melted to the point where you've got no drive off, then it's all kind of a moot point. But for me personally, I'll always take having the car kind of keep the right front on it itself and let me manage the right rear, because that's just a lot easier to do, and you know that kind of the inherent performance is always there.
Let's go 3 wide almost then here at Homestead, Miami. Thatcher Ponte almost getting there, but didn't have the drive. It was well cleared by Travis Henderson then, as once again to that patented high side, you could say right now, for one Mr. Ross Banfield he goes, and he'll fall back into 4th. Let's get a comparison then about what the lap times have been like between 1st and 2nd position out there over the last 5 laps, and look at how telling it is between 23 and 24. Oh, now we'll look at the 150. It's at least 1/10, 2/10 every single lap, and that over 1.5 miles. If you're losing 1/10, 2/10 of a second over 1.5 miles, they say 1/10 is the equivalent of a second here, Christian. That's like being 1.5, 2 seconds quicker on a road course.
Yeah, it really is, and you know, it kind of always go back to, well, how long does it take to run down a gap of say 2.4 seconds? And you know, it's very, very uncommon to have a 1/10 a lap advantage on someone. So you're looking at taking as many as 25 laps to close this gap, even if they could somehow reverse this pace differential. But Pataska having nearly 2/10 is, you know, that's lights out. You can't race that. You know that you're beaten, if I'm honest.
You certainly do. Adam State now making moves, and up into the wall goes Henderson, and he gets a big wiggle as he tries to get down off of it. It's 3 wide just behind it as Banfield had to deal there with State and Bobrovsky. It is a slew of blue behind Ross Banfield right now. All of the Grizzly TFR and Daytona cars all out there, and they have been some of the most loyal drivers to the major series out there. Never miss a race at all for the number of years that they are. And David H. Baker almost peeling off there to the apron, just saying, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm going to stay well to the back.
Yeah, and I kind of really like that we kind of... I know some drivers don't like having really, really big teams in the league, and just generally a lot of drivers don't enjoy going up against, you know, 7, 8 team cars in a race because they feel like it's a massive disadvantage. And yeah, it is a massive disadvantage. But one thing I do like about it is if everybody in the team is kind of keeping everybody going and, you know, everyone's just turning up to the race, having fun, hanging out, then that offsets kind of anything bad that happens, and it makes a reason to turn up and race that's more than just a competitive one. Because, you know, we've being honest about it, we've seen some really miserable runs from some of these TFR cars the past couple of weeks. I know Cordell Colon's just had a really rough back half of the season, but he's still turning up, he's still racing, and that just makes me think that a lot of that's got to come down to that he enjoys kind of hanging out with the guys that he's running with. So, yeah, if it means people stay in a season the entire time, I'm all for having big teams in leagues.
Let's get a replay of what happened to the 24 going through 4. That was very nearly a turned around Travis Henderson out there on circuit. We'll try and get that in the next couple moments because it's all kicking off. You got this pack mentality right now, small little pockets of 2. This feels like it's super speedway and they're trying to push each other a bit. Henderson, Banfield, Adam State, Gabriel Roos, all up there racing for 3rd. They've allowed Adam Fatcher-Ponti to get away. I wonder if Henderson's used all his tyre up early on in the stint, hoping for cooler conditions because he's struggling out there.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. I mean, normally you would expect to get to about 30 laps into the run before you start to see kind of that differential building, but Homestead being what it is, it's possible to really, really burn the tires off in the first 20 laps. I think that's what we're seeing here. I mean, Fatcher-Ponti was not extremely strong at the beginning of the race, but now he's well and truly cemented in that 2nd spot. He's not got pace for Pataska, but he's left this group behind.
He has, and he's already out to the tune of 1.7 seconds from this one. The low line starting to really work in. Adam State looking for 3rd position now as they go through, and suddenly loses that bit of help from behind as they run now up into 3 and 4 once again. So the back end stepping out, and it is really noticeable for number 24, who's struggling to get that drive and to put that power down, and all of a sudden down through will go Gabriel Roos now. Moving up into 4th position. Ross Banfield on the wrong side of it as well as David H. Baker, Mel Narovich, Trevor Vavrovsky. They're all there. They all want to get through. They all want to decide, hey, we want to go out there and race and really work things forward. And a little moment off the X there for Adam State. Everybody is struggling with these hot conditions. There's your race leader, Dallas Pataska, 23 laps he is out there in front. It's Adam Fatcher-Ponti in 2nd, and then the 24's going to migrate up, tap the rear of Gabriel Roos, find himself swamped as he goes through. Those tyres are shot.
Yeah, and that all happened there because he had to open out the steering to make sure he wasn't going to lose his own car. And I was just looking at the 777. Obviously, he'd been pinned in behind the 24, and I think he's actually struggling the same. You don't see it as visually in terms of kind of snapping out the right rear on corner exit as you do with the 24, but it is still there a little bit. And while he was losing spots whilst he was pinned in on that top line, it's not changed now that he's got clean air up there. He's going backwards as well.
Yeah, it's definitely not changing because down on the inside, that's going to be Trevor Vavrovsky making that move and on that inside line getting what is wanted. So not much to speak of there. Gabriel Roos to the inside of Adam State on that low line, trying to get the clearance done then in 3rd position, and had about half a car length clear before that goes to absolutely even, running up into 3 and 4, that 18 to 20 degree parabolic banking. Of course, the circuit started as almost a homage, so to speak here, Christian, to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It had a brick look to it, and ultimately they decided, you know what, this brick track, this mini Indianapolis, it's not working here. We need to find something that's a little bit more natural, and it turned into this, a fantastic 1.5 miler.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like this is kind of why every track always talks about going to progressive banking and whatnot, is because of Homestead. But being truthful about it, I feel like Homestead is really the only track where it's really, really worked well. And I mean, it's worked extremely well. It's one of the best racing 1.5 there is, if not the best. But yeah, I totally agree that old kind of mini Indianapolis sort of style track they had, yeah, it just wasn't good. They made the right decision to reconfigure this, and I think that kind of points out that Indianapolis only really works because it's Indianapolis.
It really does, and it does show. We're 1/10 of the way then through this race. It's taken us about 15.5 minutes to get through, so flying through these speeds. Ross Banfield, we just saw there over that last lap, almost grabbing the wall out of 4, which would have been trouble out on circuit. David H. Baker now on the low line. Adam State up top. Gabriel Roos starting to break away from this group. Right up to the top goes Adam State, but he's got nothing to drive with on the exit, and he struggles to get that turned in. In fact, he rides the wall coming out of 4 there, trying to get a mini Ross Chastain going, as David Milnarevic now tries to go to that low line and take that one away. A lot more confidence from car number 69. This is going to be the manager's style of race, and to put the open wheel perspective in, you need to be more of a Jenson Button out there today if you want to get it home to the line in a great position.
Yeah, you absolutely do, and it's the kind of driver that this sort of scenario would really, really favor, actually. A tyre management expert.
Well, a tyre management expert certainly would love that out there at this moment in time. There are still those chases going on, and it is worth keeping an eye out on what's been going on with car 27 and Alexander Russell out there, because it's been a 35-1 that last time by for Dallas Pataska. Alexander Russell is the fastest driver on track. He was 0.4 of a second quicker that last time around. He has got a really, really quick Chevrolet.
Yeah, he's definitely got the pace, but he's really, really beholden to having a caution come out to get him back in the fight. There's no way he's going to run down 28 seconds all of his own accord. It's just not going to happen that easily. But the good thing for him is that he doesn't look like he's under threat from actually going a lap down to Pataska.
No, he doesn't. And 34.8 that time by to another 35.1, so another 0.3 of a second then to claw that back. The gap to 29.3 seconds for the pole sitter, who was in 12th position overall. Racing continuing on as the low line continues to be the one that works out there on circuit. Big wiggle in front there. Gabriel Roos catching a very nice drift then coming out of 2. David H. Baker and David Milnarevic would have seen that in front in 5th and 6th positions, 5th and 4th position, sorry, respectively. Milnarevic started this race all the way back in 13th. He's up to 5th on what has just been a consistent drive, and that's what Milnarevic has done season on season. He's good at these very consistent drives.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, he's had a couple of races where it's unfortunately gone against him this season, but when it's scenarios like this, it is where I feel like he's at his best.
Yeah, so he's going to be at his best. He's going to be trying to do as much as he possibly can. And Christian, the work that is needed is going to be so important, because we have been going about 33 laps now. We're going to start here. At what point do you start thinking about the pit strategy and thinking about coming in, getting fuel, getting tyres?
Well, there's a couple of options available to you. I think the sort of the standard strategy is going to be to pit around about lap 55-ish. That's kind of when I would pit. As we see someone's coming down at the pit road early. Is this Tom Dreiling again?
Let's have a look then. I believe it's not. It's Trevor Vavrovsky who's down then in the pits. Dreiling's been in the pits for 26 laps of Vavrovsky. First taker, lap 33. This is early, and it's right on that early stage. And we do expect it here for Trevor Vavrovsky. He's got a car that pretty much is chewing up tyres faster than anybody else's. So he's going to come in early, and this is going to be a very tough day for him if this goes green for a very long time. Gabriel Roos stuck up then on that high side. David H. Baker finds a way through. Milnarevic trying to follow into 4th, not going to find it. And that's where that draft comes into play. You can get yourself about a car length when you're stuck in the draft behind someone else on that straight. If you've not got it, you've got a chance. But Milnarevic, just look at how much confidence that is just sticking there. That number 69 Ford Mustang compared to the Chevrolet behind the number 323.
Yeah, and this is where it really comes in that you've kind of ran the beginning part of the run well. This is where you're going to start to just kind of chew people up who've really kind of pressed their tires too hard. And just coming back to Vavrovsky's early stop, sorry. So if he's kind of going to do this 33-lap strategy, roughly speaking, he's actually 5 laps short of where a 7-stint race would be on lap 38 stopping. But my expectation is a 5-stint race under green. and that's around about 54, 55 laps, as I was saying before. Now, you could attempt to force stint, but I don't think you can save and manage 67 laps on fuel. I just don't think that's possible. But anywhere between about lap 45 and 55 is roughly where I'd expect to see people pitting, and that would be a 5 or a 6 stint race. Personally, I think you've got to try and get out to 55 if you can. And that's where running the beginning of the run's easy and not taking too much out of your tires is going to help, because Vrhovsky's up against it. He's basically got to get a minute on terms of pace on track, and I just don't see how he's going to do that.
Yeah, and that can be really troublesome out there if you can't find the fuel number and you're struggling, you're bleeding time, and you're struggling to keep the grip on. You're just going to bleed more fuel as you try and keep the car pointed in the right direction, and that's always going to be the trouble that they have going through. Malnarevich still on the back of David H. Baker as they close up to Adam Thatcher-Ponte in second position. Has been a change lower down. Alexander Russell, no surprises, has got by Cordell Cologne with a lot of ease. He's now up into 10th position in this one. It's 10 seconds to Ryan Walker out there on an island in 9th position here in this one. But what a run that he's going to be going through. There is Alexander Russell. All nice and calm at the moment. He'll be on his own, and this is pretty much where you put the head down and say, well, I've got no one really to work with here. I've just got to work to my own accord.
Yeah, and he has no other choice than to do that. Obviously, the race didn't start the way that he would have wanted it to. He did get a big jump, and I did think that it was, you know, a little bit surprising he was able to jump out there with the restart zone and whatnot, but he's recovered from it well. You know, he didn't speed on pit entry as he was kind of coming to serve that penalty. He just took it immediately, got back out on track. He hasn't made any mistakes since, and he's on the lead lap. And I think it's highly unlikely that we'll go the entire race distance without getting a caution. So he's just doing what he needs to do at this point of the race. Stay on the lead lap, keep the car clean, and just, you know, figure out how to manage these runs while he's actually got nobody to fight with.
We're going to have something very interesting coming up then for second, third, and fourth. There is Ryan Walker, I believe, just in front in a very nice VRA. I believe that's a Coanda shirt potentially that is there. So getting that all nicely sorted. Well, this is going to get everything all sorted here. We just had something interesting happen then, second, third, fourth. This is actually Mark Stevenson, who's a lap down at this point in time, number 51. Who is out there at the moment, trying to get as much drive. And hey, I'll tell you something right now. Pretty nice when you've got the stream on in the background, isn't it, Christian?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't think he's going to be able to really turn around and watch it whilst he's racing, but it's cool to see it as we see another TFR car coming down out of pit road.
Yeah, that TFR car is Cordell Cologne, who had just dropped the lap, so down into the pits. Trevor Vrhovsky, by the way, is running about 2 seconds a lap quicker than everybody else at this point in time because he's got the fresh tyres. He's just got through that group in second. Big snap going through from Adam Thatcher-Ponte. On the radio is David Malnarevich trying to coordinate here with David H. Baker. How do we get past number 150 out there, who rides up the circuit here, struggling out of 4. This might be the moment to go for it, but David H. Baker doesn't have enough of the drive, and this is a David H. Baker who, remember the last time a race completely went green, Christian, won the whole thing, came second in the whole thing.
Yeah, he did. Executed a brilliant strategy, really. Just ran his own race. We didn't talk about him the entire time, pretty much. He just appeared at the end. And, you know, it's a good example of sticking to your own plan and not getting drawn into what everyone else is doing, because by doing his own race, it really, really worked out for him in the best way possible. And I'm actually surprised if Thatcher-Ponte's struggling a bit. Obviously, he used a little bit of tire life to kind of jump out to the second spot, but with the pace he was showing, I thought he was just going to be able to kind of hang on to that. I certainly didn't expect that he was going to get ran back down, but everyone is compressing up behind him now. You see, obviously, Baker, Melneritz, and Roos is also on the tail of this. It looks like Adam State, Banfield have kind of dropped back. They're having their own battle over that 6th spot.
Travis Henderson then coming out of the pits. He's made his stop as well. Starting to gear up now with Gabriel Roos, starting to join this one, and again struggling on the power out of 4. Adam Thatcher-Ponte finds himself in the wrong position at the wrong time. He's going to be on that high line again, moving through 1 and 2 once more, sort of at a 1.5 line Ismail Narovich, but it was a little pinch to the middle there from Thatcher Ponte. Can't get any drive as the rear tyres decide, I don't want to be rear tyres anymore, and he will drop. Surely he's got to come down in the next couple of laps. Those tyres are pretty much as well worn as they're going to get.
Yeah, and he's around about that kind of 44, 45 lap mark, and I think at this point, with the amount of pace he's losing out on track, and it's really happened like a light switch. He was fine, and suddenly he's going way backwards. I think this isn't too damaging to pit around about this point. I've got some serious questions about the guys who are pitting in the 30s. That's just way too soon to me. You're going to be kind of just way behind the entire afternoon. But pitting on around 45, you know, you're going to commit to doing one more stop than everyone else, but it's not too terrible. You know, there's enough laps where you're going to be faster that it might just work out better if your car simply can't make it out to that 54, 55 lap point.
Gone into the pits comes Adam Thatcher Ponte. I was keeping an eye on Ross Banfield and Adam State, and both of them are effectively running that wall up the top because they just simply don't have the grip. Look at this, up at the top, Adam State almost taps the wall again, and every time you're up there and into that wall, you're taking a bit of paint off the car, you're damaging in there the suspension and the wheel that's there, and you're just making life more and more difficult as you go through, and drivers are just struggling out there to get everything sorted. Now watch through the middle. That's going to be Travis Henderson, who's a lap down, trying to get past both of them. As in the wall there went Ross Banfield. This is how good new tyres are compared to old. Adam State did a 35.8. Travis Henderson, who's just gone through on them, 33.8. It's 2 seconds a lap here.
Well, yeah, I was just looking at a couple of other spots throughout the field. I saw the 97 of Ryan Walker. He went straight up into the wall in the middle of 3 and 4, properly bank shotted it. And I think that's a bit fortunate, really, that these cars are a lot more robust than the old Gen 6s. And to be honest, new damage is a bit more forgiving than old damages when it comes to wall contact. So he's probably gotten away with that. And in the past, that would have been a significant pace loss that he just picked up.
Well, Ryan Walker's actually just lost the position to Alexander Russell out there. So that's a position loss for Ryan, who is going to be running his own race at this moment in time, just trying to reach there with the, I believe it's the Coanda shirt on at this point in time, and the orange and the white and the purple, trying to get that sorted out. Alexander Russell, though, has been such an interesting story in this race. Another little wiggle there from them as they go through, because Pataska's last lap was a 35.7, and consistently Alexander Russell 0.3 of a second quicker, 0.3 of a second quicker, 0.3 of a second quicker. Without that jump, you know, he'd be gone. It's as simple as that. He'd be gone.
Yeah, he absolutely would. And, you know, it's a real surprise because obviously I may be a bit biased in this instance, but I really expected that Pataska was going to be the guy to beat. And obviously at the beginning of the race, with that first lap penalty, we never really saw what Russell versus Pataska was going to look like. But after that, Pataska dropped the field. But since then, Russell has just ran a really good first run. He's actually, you know, taken about a third of the loss of the penalty out already. He's back to within just over 20 seconds. And speaking of Pataska as well, he's dropping back now. Baker and Melner, it's starting to close up to him, and it just makes me think that Pataska maybe took too much out too soon, but he's probably pitting within 3 to 4 laps anyway. And just one more note on that shirt. I believe that's actually an old school Satellite Racing shirt from when they were sponsored by VRS. Yeah. Might also have one of those myself somewhere.
Oh, do you now? Oh, that's beautiful. Now, into the pits then will come Adam State. This a pit from 6th position. Worth noting that Trevor Favroski, who made the very early stop, it's about half a lap ahead of the group of Travis Henderson and Adam Thatcher Ponte at this moment. So really took an advantage early on as those pit stops have been slowly cycling their way through. So found an advantage there in terms of making that stop. But everyone's looking at where they're going to cycle out in comparison to everybody else out then on circuit. And as the focus is there at the moment on Trevor Favroski, just in front of him is Alexander Russell, who's doing well. Favroski, that time, which was 2 seconds a lap when he started, well, he's used the tyres up so much that difference is now only 0.7 of a second now between himself and Alexander Russell.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that, okay, so you might get a really big hit of performance at the beginning of the run, but obviously it diminishes the longer you go. Everything kind of reaches a plateau. The point's way out there. It's, you know, way longer than a fuel run, but it's long enough. You see Stevenson actually get in the back of him.
In the back, can he save it? Yes, he can. Trevor Vorosky got away with one there. Stevenson going through as he had the new tyres. But my word, Trevor, if that doesn't wake you up here at Homestead Miami, I don't know what does.
Yeah, that's a little bit rude there by the 51 car, if I'm honest. He seems to be apologizing over the radio. You see a couple of TFR cars coming down onto pit road.
Yeah, it's Baker and Milnarovic, same times they both come in. Stevenson saying, I thought you were coming down into the pits there as he got underneath, which was a very interesting point in principle then, as Milnarovic then will look to get his box first, get it in the marks, 4 tyres, full fuel, get back out and going again. So those who haven't pitted yet, Dallas Pataska, Gabriel Roos, and I believe Ross Banfield and Alexander Russell. Those are the 4 to keep in mind who have yet to come down and make their stops.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm surprised that Banfield's actually still out there because he's lost so much pace. I really thought he was going to be one of the earlier pits, and he's going to get run over nearly by Stevenson once again, and he's missed the pit entry because of that.
Wow. It just shows you that you need to practice your pit entries, not just on fresh tyres on a 5-lap run, Christian, but go 60 laps, put it in the pits, because that there was just not having any turn on the tyres, any grip to get it down onto that apron.
Yeah, now it's a massive time loss because obviously he's got to get that thing back up to speed. He probably lost, 4 to 5 seconds at least there in that one corner alone. And he's still not down on pit road. So now he's gone long on a car that already looked like it was struggling to do that. Has got it down onto the apron this time, and it looks like he is going to get to pit road safely.
Ross Banfield gets it down in the pits then as we focus on Alexander Russell in 3rd position. Trevor Vorosky just behind in 4th, who has a 30-lap differential on the tyres at this point and is looking for a way to get through on that low side. But Russell, the fastest driver of those who have yet to come down in and make a stop, he's been making that car work wonders for him out there. As Vorosky runs low, takes that 3rd position away. No arguments about it then going forward from Alexander Russell. Different strategies available between both of them right now. So it's going to be so interesting to see who's where. Henderson ahead of Thatcher Ponte. Ross Banfield just coming out of the pits now. Where everyone finds themselves out at the end of this stint, I think it's going to be the really interesting points they go through. There's 777 leaving the pits. Ross Banfield will come out in 11th position, so he's behind Adam State, and he's behind him by a fair bit.
Yeah, to be honest, we're not going to know how this is all going to shuffle out. If the race goes green, we're literally not going to know until everyone has pit for the last time, because it's going to be completely up in the air until we get to that final run. Everybody's on such different split-up strategies, but, Russell is looking really, really fast. He's almost halved that penalty loss in this first run, which is really, really impressive. And I'm surprised that both Pataska and Russell are actually still out on track. This makes me think they are going to try and stretch out to 67 laps. But I just didn't think you could do that. I didn't think the tank had the ability to get you that far. I really thought that around about 60 laps was going to be the maximum possible.
Well, this is where you got to make those laps. Ryan Walker now put a lap down. Milnarovic has just got through. Getting the lap back is David H. Baker. Moving forward as Dallas Pataska angles for the pits then on lap 59. Oh, he almost hits the retainers there on the inside, the attenuator. Oh my word, Dallas Pataska nearly didn't have that one turned in. And he checks to see if he's still got a car. Yeah, I've still got a car. You haven't touched anything, buddy. But he's down in the pits, but a big scare for the champion and race leader.
Yeah, massively frightening that was. And then obviously having to release the brake to get it turned. Then you're in danger of speeding, and you saw he completely locked up all 4 as he actually got to the cone. I don't believe he did speed, so he got pretty lucky with that one. And now, really, for me, it's a case of how long is Russell going to go? Is he going to be able to get out to that 67 lap point? I don't think he's going to, but it'll be interesting to see how far he can reach.
Well, it'll be easier for him because he has had that one stop effectively where he didn't push the tyres in after lap 1. He already came down in, took his penalty and went again. So he had that in the back of the mind just to go with. And a handful of drivers trying to stretch to 67. Ryan Walker's one of them, as there goes Ross Banfield straight through on the inside. We're going to take a very, very quick break here at the Global Sim Racing channel, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, we'll get fallout from the first round of stops as the final few stragglers look to bring themselves in here at Homestead Miami Speedway.
iRacing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. iRacing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics, engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12 Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iRacing.com.
"64 laps only for Alexander Russell." You just said just before we went live, Christian, that it was a bit of a waste. I completely disagree with you. Even if you can get it to 64 laps, that's great. Race is on for the race lead overalls. That's just changed positions right now. Trevor Favrovsky loses that out. Gabriel Roos, now your new leader here at Homestead.
Yeah, the reason why I say it's a bit of a waste is because if he can't actually make the fuel number at 67, then he's just been out there losing time for 10 or so laps. But obviously it can kind of pay advantage at some point in the race, because now even if he's kind of shortening his stint lengths down to the end of the race, it means he's going to be on faster tires for longer. He's just taking that big hit so early on, and with how strong a pace he's got, I just feel like he could have afforded to pit on 54 and it would have been fine.
Yeah, we're also looking at Trevor Favrovsky and how he's struggling. Remember, he came in on lap 30, in the 30s he came in, so it shows you how early he decided to come and make that stop. Lap 32 at the end of that he came in, so he's already gone longer than that initial first stint, but you just feel that Favrovsky's got no confidence on the old tyres, and at this rate he's going to be doing twice the amount of stops of certain drivers around him.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I really wasn't a fan of that strategy. It just looked like it was going to really, really hurt him late in the race. It's one of those strategies where you kind of look at it, and whilst everyone's sort of shuffling out, you think, maybe it'll work out. But then at the end, when you get hit by having to take another pit stop and you go all the way to the tail of the field, that's when you realize it was a bad move.
I will correct myself. Gabriel Roos actually just got back the laps. It's Adam Thatcher-Ponte who is your race leader right now. Favrovsky, second position. Henderson in third. And just going through, getting the lap back then on Travis Henderson is Alexander Russell going down low side and picking that off quite nicely. Protaska coming out of the pits is back in sixth position, and his eyes will be fixed on who's in front of him, which is David Melmarovic. And you can see that just behind Protaska, looking out a little bit high. trying to see whether there's an angle there. Milnarovic was slow on the opening uptake when it came to his stint, but was really good in that second half. And I think this is where he's coming through on that 5-stop strategy. He's got that absolutely to rights, where Dallas Pataska's hoping for a very lightning fast final stint when he gets to it.
Yeah, and it is interesting that Pataska has already now cleared Milnarovic at this second stint, so to speak. But at the same time, as you say, Milnarovic was very, very strong in the back half of that first stint, so it's possible that this advantage for Pataska is not going to last.
It is very possible, and Dallas Pataska just has to manage and navigate his way through this one. Lap 70 here of 267, a 400-mile race to end the season. The championship finale here of the European Majors Series here on the Global Sim Racing channel. You don't often see this from series, really, Christian. The year-long series seems to be something that in the real world everyone loves, and everyone loves to emulate it when it comes to sim racing. But when they get right down to it and the practicalities of it, the one thing they look at is, well, you've got to put a commitment in for an entire year. That's why the 3-month format, the iRacing 12-week schedule system, has been so good, because you know it's a week-to-week commitment. You know exactly what you're doing and when, as now after Travis Henderson gets dispatched of, David H. Baker here for Dallas Pataska dispatches of it, and Vavrovsky's next.
Yeah, and actually Vavrovsky's so slow through the middle of 3 and 4 there that Pataska nearly got in the back of him. Wouldn't have been the first time the 10 was sent sideways on the exit of 4. We saw that already for him. But yeah, this is where this strategy of Vavrovsky's is already starting to show. It's not a particularly good one, because he's looking like he needs to pit right now, and he's already been passed, so he's essentially already a pit stop behind. But coming back to your point on the year-long championship, yeah, it is a bit of a grind, I would say, knowing that you're kind of running something for an entire calendar year. And I think everybody likes the idea of it, especially obviously when people are used to watching that in reality. But I think what kind of hits home once you've kind of attempted it is that there's a reason why in reality everyone is always kind of asking for, you know, more off weeks and whatnot, because it is pretty grueling. And obviously the motivation in reality is that it's actually what you're working for, it's your job and everything, whereas when it comes to kind of a hobby, as these guys are doing, then, you know, it's a little bit different. It's a little harder to justify running something for an entire year.
There goes Trevor Vavrovsky then, losing the place to Travis Henderson. Another one of the earliest stoppers out there on that opening stint, so he gets his pit stop nicely sorted out then, as this race looks to continue on then here at the Homestead Miami Speedway out there overall. The gaps are starting to form just a little bit, and it is worth noting how quickly Dallas Pataska is chasing down Adam Fatcher-Ponti. That last lap was 1.2 seconds the difference, and the 150 starts the car 5th position overall. Going to be looking backwards in the sights and seeing that very, very menacing number 23 closing up and trying to get into that race leading position. That Chevrolet looking very good on the tires compared to the Direct Innovations orange Chevrolet that is in front and leading this race.
Yeah, we saw obviously the first stint that Fatcher-Ponti is not particularly good once he kind of gets to the mid part of the run, and certainly the late part of the run is just not very strong at all. So I think this is bad news for him, because we're kind of just moving into that middle part of the run now, and he's already kind of got his main competition about to pass him.
Yeah, he certainly does, and I'm sure that they'll be looking at this, and there won't be too much of a fight between these two, because they are on differing strategy calls. Adam Fatcher-Ponti gets somewhat of a run off the exit, nowhere near to the tune of Dallas Pataska, who can just slowly ease his way to the inside, have the car respond to him, grip up on that low line, which Fatcher-Ponti's can't due to the wear of the tyres, and fly by with a sense of ease as he goes through. Dallas Pataska back where he belongs in this race then. He is your new race leader, and will now look to try and build a gap as much as possible after taking the long stint early here in this one, which means he should, in theory, have good tyres for a little bit longer as those drivers behind convert to a different strategy to try and essentially undercut their way through, or and get themselves through. It will require that extra stop But the difference between the 5 and the 4, I think, is rather telling. Even if it does have to convert to a 5 stop here, Christian, there is still work that can be done. You still can find that right position. You still can find ways to really use that advantage. And the one thing that actually hurts this long run right now is if someone finds the wall and spins it, creates a caution. That can always be a trouble, because that just throws the numbers all out the window, because at the moment they're thinking, well, we're all spaced out a little bit. We're all running on our own. Hopefully we don't have ourselves any issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously if you did have a kind of a caution at this point in the race, it would make strategy decisions a little bit tricky, because it would mean that the optimal way to do it would be, you know, 62, 63 lap runs, and there's not many cars out there that look like they're quite comfortable doing that. There's only really one, and it's that 27 of Russell. And speaking of Russell, this is where I didn't like that he stayed out so long, because he'd really cut that gap to Pataska in the first stint. He was down to 17 seconds when they were effectively at the same point. Pataska pitting earlier than Russell did. That gap's now back up to 27 seconds. So essentially all the work that Russell did has gone out the window at this point. And I feel like it was a waste to stay out there and drop that 10 seconds.
But he is going to gain 1/10 of a second now every lap. And in fact, that last lap, he was half a second quicker, was Alexander Russell. So it does go to show you that Dallas Pataska here is now going to be at more of a disadvantage out there, and is just trying to get as much as possible. Now, Travis Henderson is pitting this lap, just hearing that over the radio. So he's going to come in for his second pit stop out there on the day. So he's going to try and find himself in. We're going to catch him, and that is Cordell Cologne's 50. Not in a very nice position, way down in the infield there, as he was trying to come in for a stop. So losing it on the infield. Remember, iRacing automatic caution system in play. Any spin that's happening and stays down on the apron is not on the circuit, so it doesn't constitute a caution.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to go back and look at what exactly happened there, because it looked like he was taking the road course layout to get to the pit entry.
Yeah, he just lost it. It's as simple as no tyres. He'd been running up. There was a lot of scraping on that right-hand side as he went around the circuit. And yeah, just car wants to come back up onto the circuit. Not going to have it. He's trying to keep that car from going around, but ultimately he takes the road course pits.
Yeah, and a good job to keep it out of the tyre wall there, actually, because it's very easy to just continue the incident onwards. It looked like it all sort of started when he was trying to get down to pit road, but he was on the brakes as he was straddling the apron, and you never really want to do that. That's always going to try and loop the car around.
So what's interesting is that Trevor Vavrovsky also came down into the pit. So Vavrovsky and Henderson have moved on to the same strategy on the same lap. That's really telling for how they want to play this race out and what they want to do over the course of it. There's contact between Stevenson and Walker, not for the first time in this race that they've gone through. So again, coming out through, Ryan Walker on the exit of 4, then getting the contact from the 51, who seemingly is making friends with everyone.
Yeah, I think that a lot of this stems from the fact that 51 is often catching cars on much worse tyres than he is, and it is always difficult to do that, but it's happened a couple of times now that I feel like he maybe should leave a bit more space than he is doing, because it's really, as you say, not making him too many friends.
No, it certainly isn't. Mark, son of Stephen, is doing enough of a job at this point in time as he tries to get back to just 1 lap down compared to the 2 laps down after the jump start that he had here today. Gabriel Roos back on the leading lap as Vavrovsky will get a lap back on him and will move around out there on circuit. There is, just in front of Ross Banfield's 777, Ryan Walker, who is a lap down and has just been trying to play that long game, but has been struggling with the tyres a lot. It's not suited to his machinery right now, and he's just hoping that he can get that home and get that home happy, but it's just not happening at this moment for him.
Yeah, we saw it at the end of the first stint that he ended up in the wall in 3 and 4, and that was kind of telling that it looked like long run the 97 was not a particularly happy car out there, and you know, it's lap 86. It's not really towards the end of the second stint yet for him, and he's already looking pretty unsettled.
While that's happened, Adam Fatcher-Ponti has just lost 2 more spots. David H. Baker and David Melnarovic have both gone through and are up into 2nd and 3rd positions. And I think David Baker is really the interesting one out there at the moment compared to the likes of, say, Dallas Pataska, who's going out there at the front, because it was a very important race for Dallas Pataska. He's got to try and pull away. But we're just starting to reach that plateau. David H. Baker, 35 flat that last time by. Pataska just a 34.9. So that's certainly started to close in. Just behind that, you've got Alexander Russell starting to make those moves. He's already cut that gap down to 25 seconds, and that was just the pass there on Ross Banfield, taking the 777 car out of 7th and moving Alexander Russell's 27 to P7.
Yeah, the 27, I feel strongly that the 27 is the best car out here right now. It's just very much out of position. And the 777, I'm a little bit surprised, actually, that Banfield's having a bit of a struggle in this race because, you know, his second half of this season has been actually so good. He's been much more competitive than he was in the opening couple of races. Obviously, there was that memorable kind of absolute rock bottom at Daytona at the beginning of the year in the next gen, but I really had high expectations that he would be kind of one of the closest fighting Pataska for this, but it's just not played out that way. His long run pace is really not competitive, whereas you've got guys like Russell who, even with a 30-second disadvantage, has effectively been able to run up and pass him within 2 runs. So yeah, the 777 long run pace is not there. It's absolutely there for the 27. But what's also interesting to me is there's so many of these TFR and satellite cars out there that are presumably all running either the same setup or some variation of the same setup, and they're all completely different in terms of where their strengths and weaknesses are. We've obviously seen Walker out there as a satellite car doesn't really have any long run, whereas Russell out there, a satellite car, has got the best long run of anyone. So it's just interesting to see how with this car that the driver is making a surprising difference to how long the tires are actually able to last.
Conditions as well, I think, are really important to how today is going, and I'm sure that these hot conditions, 41 degrees in sim time, is literally in the last 15 seconds ticked over 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So these are the hottest conditions that you get. Probably about another hour's worth of racing, as in comes Adam Fatcher-Ponti to make his second stop then of the day. It's these sorts of conditions where when it's getting really hot out there on track, you're just hoping for that end of the race to come along, those final 60, 70 laps, because the track, in theory, is going to reach a state where it's going to just start to cool off.
Yeah, absolutely, and that will happen. As you say, 2 p.m. kind of sim time is often, especially for these North American tracks, it's typically when the hottest conditions are. So, yeah, we're at the worst. I would say, to me, seeing 41C is actually not that high. I know for us Europeans, that's pretty toasty, but you know, we see hotter track temperatures in iRacing, but certainly we've seen as high as 50 or even 55C at certain tracks. Atlanta is one that comes to mind as always being really rough in terms of track temp, and really difficult to keep tires on it on the old configuration. But I think this kind of condition, if you're good now, you want it to stay hot for as long as possible, because this is where you really do damage. When it starts getting into cool track temperatures, a lot of track rubber, then the effect of the driver really gets diminished, because you know, there's smaller variation in terms of what they're doing for tire wear, for long run performance, and you can get away with being a bit more abusive to your tires, and it doesn't really hurt you as much. Whereas in these hot conditions, you're punished so much more. So if you're good right now, you want it to stay hot, because this is where you're going to be able to make up as much time as possible.
Just keeping an eye out. Difference between Trevor Favrovsky and Adam Fatcher-Ponti is 10 laps now out there in terms of strategy, and Fatcher-Ponti's stop put him out behind by about 3 to 4 seconds on circuit. So Fatcher-Ponti essentially behind the 8 ball with Favrovsky, but it's going to try and use those 10 laps of better tyres to really close up, and even further behind Travis Henderson, actually. So I'd say Henderson of the early stoppers in a better position than Thatcher Ponte is. You could sort of bundle them in the same bracket, 10 laps here or there, Christian.
Yeah, and Fast Ponte is actually kind of helping me out a bit because he's doing the most kind of regular strategy, so to speak. He's sticking pretty rigidly to around about running 45 laps on his tires. Everyone else out there is kind of trying to do these hybrid strategies. Some have ran longer than they needed to in stint 1, some ran shorter than they needed to, and then there's been an adjustment in stint 2. So it's getting a little bit tricky to kind of piece together exactly where everybody is. The big question mark for me is going to be when are the drivers who are kind of on that 54 lap strategy, when are they going to pit now? Because a lot of them ran out to around about 60 laps. So, you know, you'd be expecting to see them around about 110, 115-ish. And that would kind of put them back on strategy, so to speak.
There is number 23, Dallas Pataska, who's just allowed Travis Henderson back his lap. So he's back on the leading lap, is number 24. Out then on circuit and trying to give chase. The gap at the front, 6.3 seconds at this point to David H. Baker in the number 33. David Melnarovic currently third, a further 5 seconds adrift of that at this point. But David H. Baker has been keeping this one in check, and as the Legends champion then for the European split this season, he is someone who is looking out there and just doing what he does best. This is his wheelhouse that's out there, and he's keeping probably one of the best drivers out there in the major series pretty much in check.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's actually just in a little bit of a melee right now. He's got the 51 and the 150 on new tires doing a split with him into turn 1. That's going to hurt him a little bit in pace, but yeah, absolutely, this is Indianapolis all over again, isn't it? This is turning into a strategy race, and the 33 is one of the masters of just sticking to the plan, running his own race and popping up at the end. And you know, you got to give it to him. The pace is there too. It's not just picking the best strategy. He's actually got the pace to contend here. The long run in the end of stint 1 was very, very competitive. He was beginning to run Pataska down. It's possible that we're going to see that again at the end of this second stint, but I would say at the moment that the 4 cars that I think that have a realistic chance of winning this race, it's got to be Pataska, Baker, Melnaritz, and Russell. Anyone else I think is going to need a caution to get into it. They're just on these kind of odd strategies that I don't really think are going to play out.
Gabriel Roos then dives down into the pits, looking to get the stop sorted, and gets that one nicely done on that yellow commitment cone. We'll look now all the way down to the end of the pit lane for the box. A lot of blue markers on that box. You've got to really pay attention to your number and where your pit crew are. Get the 4 tyres on there. You'll go pick up right side tyres first, then they'll flip up over, get the left-hand side tyres then up on the car as the crew goes around and gets themselves sorted, and they'll get themselves back out then and away again. Fuel done at the same time, of course, and that's a pit stop there in iRacing on lap 100 here of 267.
Yeah, that's quite nice from my notebook there. He's picking a nice round number to pit on, which I wish the rest of the field was doing, but you know, that looks like a bit of a conversion to around about a 50-lap strategy. I think that's a good call, but the race has gone away from the 323 for me. He's just lost too much pace this first 2 runs, and it's going to be very, very difficult, even by changing strategies, to get back into play.
It's going to always be difficult, and speaking of difficult, there is the pass on Ross Banfield by Travis Henderson. Gabriel Roos a lap down, wants to get by both of them, but the question is, will Henderson allow it? Will be stuck up on that high line, trying to work that way around, but thank you very much. Gabriel Roos, much quicker at this stage of the race, has literally just come out of the pits. It's going to go through and it's going to start flying about on circuit at this point. So drivers start to get their laps back here. Adam Thatcher Ponte has just got his lap back as well. They're all going to be getting past Ryan Walker here up on circuit, who's up on that very top line. And drivers just starting to struggle here with those tyres. Pataska 35.5s now in terms of time. And pretty much everybody here in the 35s who have yet to come down in and make that stop, something we have seen over the course of it. And just look at Cordell Cologne up there, just finding himself in the wall, and he rides it for about a third of a turn. He's up inside on that right-hand side wall.
Yeah, he got pretty lucky that the wall didn't kind of suck him in there. He actually was able to give it a little tap and get kind of turned down off it, which is good to see. You know, it's always a bit worrying if you're catching a car that's kind of driving down the wall. You never know when they're going to flick back out of it and obviously end up in your path. And for Pataska, yeah, this is the part of the run where if he looks vulnerable, it's now. And he's also got a couple of cars around him that's making his life a little bit difficult. You see the gap to Baker starting to, well, it's actually starting to go up on screen right now, but it is starting to at least level off, maybe even start to come down. And the gap to Russell is coming down drastically.
It's half a second a lap, and it is telling at this point. But what it is telling as well, Travis Henderson just made the pass on Adam State. Adam State's just dived into the pits. So we got another taker then, lap 103, Adam State. Looking to try and get that all sorted, averaging on those stints about 51.5 in terms of lap length. So he's managing to make that stop now, trying to keep himself pretty much in and around that 5th position. Was racing earlier on with Ross Banfield. He's looking to try and break away from that once again.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we kind of talk about that, 23 looks like he's a little bit stuck behind Vavrosky here, and Vavrosky's going to want to try and keep him behind him just to maintain that position on the lead lap, and that's where it's something that's going to become kind of highly prized as well the further we get into this race. We've not seen a caution yet. I'm hoping I've not just cursed it, but in terms of these drivers who are on these off strategies, who are just sort of trying to stay static and maybe make a bit of a recovery, it's going to become a fight for that lucky dog spot. And obviously if you can avoid being off the lead lap, then even better.
Even better indeed. There is Adam Fatcher-Ponte out there on circuit. 30 seconds, just making the pass on Ross Banfield, moving up then into 6th position here in this one. Adam State just behind, and into the pits then will come David H. Baker from 2nd position overall. And that number 33 knows that this is going to be an important stop in the context of this race, averaging 53.5 a stint. He knows that he is 107 of 267. This has 5 stop written over it, and it has itself a pretty nice final stop come the end of this race.
Yeah, and I think this is again another example of Baker just sticking to the plan, as Malneritz is also coming down this lap. So both those cars out there are on essentially the same strategy, and I think that they're actually on the best strategy of anybody out there.
Yeah, I certainly think they are as well, and there's all good having a strategy, but you have to go and execute that strategy. Melnarovic now, I do believe, has made that decision and has gone a lap longer this time than David H. Baker. Now, that's really interesting in terms of it, because they came down at exactly the same time on their first stint, so stretching out longer now is Melnarovic.
Yeah, in that first stint, they were much closer in terms of track position, and I do wonder if maybe there was a conversation there to split them, because if one driver makes a mistake, it's quite easy to stack up the second one. So being offset by 1 lap, even though they were further apart on track this time, it does seem smart, especially if you're on the same team. Just offset by 1 lap. It's not really a big deal, but obviously it's much less jeopardy if there is a mistake.
Ross Banfield then jumping off of the racing circuit. He's going to dive in then at lap 108, then to lap 109, and make his pit stop out then overall on the circuit. What I find very interesting as well is that Melnarovic actually missed his box in the pit lane, so that's going to cost him some time.
Yeah, that's never a good sign, especially under green. It's disastrous under yellow, because obviously everyone's packed together so tightly, but under green it's not good either. You see the 50 actually just really pounded the fence there coming off a 2.
Well, it has been the story of Cordell Cologne's race so far. That right wall, that top of the banking, I think is it's got to know Cordell Cologne quite a bit. As in comes race leader Dallas Pataska, lap 110, the decision to come in. And if this is looking at a 4-stop strategy, it's not online at this point, because that would only take you to 220 on these stints. So 220 and then 47 laps to get yourself home on that final run overall, as Pataska really looking to try and line that up. Look how much room he's got in that box, trying to angle that away. And as he even comes off of the jacks there, the car does pivot a little bit over to the right, even more so.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why he did that. It's not really an advantage, especially on the green. There's nobody in front of you, and you know you drive through cars in the pit stall. So no real reason to do it. Actually, kind of can be a bit of a disadvantage if you end up at such an angle that they won't service you. But yeah, he's to my mind, he's converting to doing that 5-stint strategy. Those 53, 55 lap runs, and I think that's the right call.
And Pataska comes out behind David Baker again. And look at the gaps this time. Travis Henderson, I think, is the big one here, because that's 15 seconds. The margin up there to him and Thatcher Ponte. So those two drivers who are on a slightly different strategy have got themselves a 15-second margin. It was only about a 10-second margin on that first stint. They've extended that gap out further, trying to get their strategy to work.
Yeah, and one driver who's still out on track, the 27 of Russell, obviously we saw him go very, very long, but I think that really he should be trying to convert at this point. Otherwise, this is just going to work into a net loss for him.
It depends on the splash and dash, doesn't it? At the very end of the race, he might not even have to take 4 tyres at the end of this race. He might decide to only go right-hand side tyres if he only has himself, what, 5 to 10 laps to get the tyres up to temperature and working?
Yeah, but think how slow he's going to be, though. Obviously, we see drivers out there in the 33s on fresh tyres. If he's out there trying to extend a stint and he's doing 35s, by the time he's done 6 laps, he's lost 12 seconds. He's essentially going to have given up more time than he would have just taken tyres in the stop. Obviously, pit stops are not particularly long to begin with.
You've got to look at all the options available, Christian, don't you? There's always stuff there. Dallas Pataska sets the fastest lap of the race, then a 33.2 for the first time here at Homestead Miami Speedway, the finale of this Majors European Championship, and making progress then after 2 straight green flag pit stops. We haven't had a caution yet today as Dallas Pataska makes his way past Trevor Vavrovsky out there on circuit and moves himself up into 5th position on the chase of David H. Baker just in front.
Yeah, and I'm actually a bit surprised that Baker has come out with such an advantage here. He did obviously pit a couple laps sooner, but it's worked out as more of a net gain than I was expecting.
Yep, it's more of a net break that's out there, and you've got to make sure that those gains are being found at this point. This is a really crucial phase of the race here, and how important are those first 5 laps out there, really, Christian, on a new set of tyres. Of course, you've got all of the grip available to you, but those first 5 laps really do indicate the next 50 that you go out and race.
Yeah, they absolutely do, and that's where you've just got to not take too much performance out of them. Pretty much anything you set up in the first 5 to 10 laps of the run is going to be the trend of how that works out as the run goes on. So you want to go out there, not take too much out of them. You definitely don't want to slide one axle or the other, and you just kind of want to build along a neutral balance, and that will kind of stay with you until the end of the run if you do that. Obviously, you can force problems after that, but basically the goal is to start out as you mean to go on, and that's where, when you know that you're at a track like this that really does eat tires, that you've just got to be conservative. It's so easy to take too much out, and you'll always give back more if you do that.
Here is the race between David H. Baker and Dallas Pataska. Pataska once again looking up to that high side, trying to get the move on number 33, who leaves that outside line room, half defending there on that inside, but Pataska's going to try and just run the middle around the 33, and that is confidence. Oh, that is confidence going around the outside. Look at that from Dallas Pataska, to have the confidence to just plant it in the middle and say, the car's going to do exactly what I tell it to do. That is on rails on the start of a stint.
Yeah, absolutely, and the middle is really, really not where you want to be, so to be able to do that is obviously quite a bit of pace in the car, and obviously the driver's got a lot of confidence in it too.
They've got a lot of confidence. They've got all that going. Alexander Russell still yet to come down and make that stop. here. He's on lap 119 of this race. Now, if you want to reach halfway, that then is going to be lap 234. So that's going to be another 15 laps from here. I doubt that we're going to get there. Maybe 128, I think, might be able to be managed. And at that rate, there'll be about a 15 to 20 lap stint at the end of the race here for Alexander Russell, who is just trying to run to the end. But these times are still impressive for how long he's gone. It's a 35.4 still, which is definitely nothing to shake a stick at.
Yeah, I agree, but I just feel like he would have been better off trying to convert back onto the same strategy as the race leaders, because he's got the raw pace in the car to challenge them, and he's giving it up right now by just going out there for many more laps than they are, running 2 seconds a lap slower.
Travis Henderson in the pits then. Now this is big, because he's taking his third stop before Alexander Russell's even had his second yet, and he's going to be followed in by Trevor Vavrosky. So both of them coming together.
Yeah, and these two are honestly not on a good strategy. They're now pit stop behind pretty much.
They pretty much are, and that's going to cost them in the long run. But there is Adam Fatcher-Ponti, there is Dallas Pataska, and this is second position falling away. No surprises there for Fatcher-Ponti. He's about 10 laps to the good on the strategy of those who have just pitted. So maybe in the next 10 laps or so, 10 to 15 laps, we'll see Adam Fatcher-Ponti thinking about making a pit stop in that orange 150. But at least for the moment, Pataska has got to try and chase down Alexander Russell. That gap out there on circuit to take the race lead away is 5.5 seconds.
Yeah, see, this is why I don't like this strategy from the 27, because he's losing so much time out there, and he's not going to be like he didn't make the number he needed to on that first stint. So it doesn't get easier to make that number as it goes on. I'm going to be looking to see if he is able to make it, but I don't see how he's going to. He's got to get out, another 11 laps, and by that point, Pataska is going to have cleared him easily. And then if Russell doesn't make that number, well, he's a pit stop behind on the same strategy. So it just with the pace he's got, just convert, run Pataska down. There's plenty of laps to do this.
There are plenty of laps as David H. Baker now dispatches of Adam Fatcher-Ponti, who moves back into fourth position in this one, and those tires just start to struggle more and more and more. And we were talking about David Melnarovic and how he was in that conversation with David H. Baker. It was about 5 seconds, 6 seconds the gap. That gap has ballooned out to about 11, so 5 seconds lost in the pit stop and going through, all because of one missed box.
Yeah, that's where you just can't have that happen. It makes so much more sense to just pull the car up short and have to nudge it forwards than it does to slide through and have to reverse. And as we were talking about that, Pataska has now passed Russell on track, and Russell's got to get out at 134 to make the strategy work.
Yeah, he absolutely does. That might actually be the call. Dive down into the pits, lap 125. It isn't. It's going to stay out and keep going and trying to chase this down, but the longer it goes, the tougher it gets, and it's that sort of race right now for Alexander Russell, where I think he's driving himself out of the race victory conversation and just looking for some points. Dallas Pataska has it under lock and key at the moment. David H. Baker will be interesting in comparison to how long his tyres last and whether he can keep it on a strategy and actually keep Dallas Pataska behind him in the long and the short of this race. Fatcher-Ponti now having to look at Ryan Walker, looking to get the lap back. He's going to start migrating up the circuit, go through. But at least for Dallas Pataska, it's his world and we're just living in it, Christian.
Yeah, it pretty much is. And, I wish we hadn't had those initial start mistakes from both Russell and Stevenson, because I think it would have been much closer than this. Stevenson looks like he's not really made up for that error that he had. He was obviously 1 lap down after the penalty, but he's now scored us 2 laps down, and we've seen he hasn't made too many friends out there either. So doesn't look like he wouldn't necessarily be in contention for the victory fight, but he would have definitely at least been up in that top 5 battle, I feel. We know he's got good pace. And yeah, for Russell, it's just a case of what could have been. I mean, there's obviously the chance, and a fairly high chance, I think, that we do get a yellow before the end of this race that might bring him back in. But at the moment, it feels like he's playing himself out of the race.
It does, and at least right now, I believe he's going to be coming in this time by. So lap 128 on the money. He's going as far as the tank will allow him, and he's going to dive down into the pits on the brakes, ducks down low, and will now go into his box for a stop then here as they go on to lap 129 overall. So Alexander Russell, I'd say at this point in time, if he can get the strategy going, maybe he's just trying to race for third here at this point. It's going to be that sort of short stop at the end that's really going to decide it. We're not going to know until the last 20 laps if it stays green the whole way.
Yeah, it's definitely true, but I just don't. Yeah, he's missed the pit box a little bit, but got back into it. But from my perspective, this is not really worked out. He's going to come back out essentially a lap down on Pataska now. So every time we see him close up, we saw him run down half that gap in the first stint. We saw him get it back to essentially the same point before Pataska pit in the second stint, and he just keeps giving the time back, and it's honestly really confusing. There must be some other factor that I'm not picking up on as to why he's doing this, because to me, he should have converted onto the 54 lap strategy right away, and it would have put him in a position to maybe try and run down that rest of the, the 15-second gap over the course of the race, and he might have been able to do it. At this point, I think he has no choice but to convert to doing 45 lap runs from here on out, run it as hard as he possibly can, and hope that somehow it's going to overhaul this deficit. I'm not convinced that it will, but I feel like that's what he's got to do. He's got to stop running this car for 60-odd laps, because he's 3 laps short every time. It's not going to work.
Ross Banfield here is desperate to stay on the leading lap. You can see that is Dallas Pataska just behind. And Ross Banfield here knows that if he can stay on that lead lap, he'll be very happy and won't have to worry about things like the lucky dog out there. Pataska being a little bit bottled up here, 34.8 that last lap around. You consider he was doing 34.2s. He's dropped nearly 4-5 tenths of a second a lap trying to pick away around this 777, which is just not letting him have anything.
Yeah, it does look like there's a bit of mirror driving going on here, doesn't it? Every time we see they're going to the corner, and 777 looks like he's trying to adjust his line to make sure he's always ahead of Pataska. And surprisingly, even with the with relatively fresh tires, Pataska's not able to get by. 777 again, the big wiggle off of 2, and it looks like he's still going to be going defensive down here into 3. He really does not want to end up off the lead lap, and I can absolutely understand and appreciate that, but it does feel like it's a pretty robust defense.
It's a robust defense at halfway here at Homestead Miami Speedway, the Major Series European Split Championship Finale, second half, coming up after this.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ride around the world. I'm Mick Claridge, and I'm going to ride around the world on my bike. My son, he gave me advice at the start of this ride, and he looked at me and just said, "Dad, don't be a moron."
Let me do my animal signal to gain their respect.
How's it going, Sally? Yeah, I'm alright, Mick. How's it going? Worse than that bit in Lord of the Rings where they go into the top and the spiders in the tunnel. I'm just hoping there's a spider at the top of this one to kill me.
Freezing. And I failed. I moroned up the ride.
Pit stop still going on here on a completely green Homestead Miami Speedway. It has certainly been working out in the favor of that driver, number 23, Dallas Pataska, at this moment. An hour and 21 minutes in through this race. His lead 6.3 seconds over David H. Baker, who is keeping him honest every single stage of the way here around this fantastic circuit. We've been keeping an eye on a couple drivers who could make some waves here in this one. Melnarovic has been a little bit further behind in third position, but Alexander Russell is still a very interesting and curious case, Christian, because the difference is the longer that it goes on like this, the more advantage that he seems to get by bringing all that pace back down. We talked about how it was 0.3 of a second a lap in the opening stint. That then turned into half a second in the second stint. Right now, he's gaining a second a lap on Dallas Pataska.
Yeah, and we know that the pace is there in the car. It's just that he needs to start converting it into actually some, positive balance here, because at the moment he's going into the red every single stint. It starts off looking extremely positive for him, and then it swings the other way massively. So I think at this point he's got to convert to a different strategy. The 60 lap run thing is not working out. He's got to go to doing 45s, and he's got to start just getting this pace benefit from the car, because at the moment he's essentially 30 seconds behind. Well, he's actually more. I mean, he's 32 seconds behind if you say he's essentially exactly one lap down, but he's got to somehow get that back. So around about 10 to 11 seconds a stint from here to the end of the race. Now, sometimes it looks like the pace is there to do that, but when he's running long, he's giving back. But when Pataska pits, it looks like he's ran down 15 seconds. By the time Russell's pitting, he's given up, say, 20 seconds. So it's a bit strange to see, and I'm just curious as to what he's actually thinking with this. He is now back on the lead lap, but this is the point of the race where you've got to flip that around and stop taking a 5-second loss and start turning that into an 11-second gain somehow.
Got to find the advantages then, and the core YouTube channel Pink Chevrolet is going to try and do everything. Gabriel Roos then from 4th position is going to jump down off of the oval and go in for a pit stop then with the 3-2-3. Look to get his service and back out away again on 142. This will be his 3rd stop then of the race. And Gabriel Roos, we haven't really talked about what he's doing on strategy. He sort of gets up into a great position, has a good early car, but then he just sort of miles away into the mid-pack a little.
Yeah, now this is an interesting question. Do you think that he's going to try and do the kind of standard 41, 42 lap stints to the end here, or do you think he's going to try and split this dead in half and try and only do one more stop?
Depends on what he wants to do. It's 62 laps that you'd feel that he needs to get out of each tank, which is doable in this race. We've seen it done, but it depends on how Gabriel Roos has been driving. I think he's going to be a 341 sort of driver compared to the 250-odd laps that are there. So I think that's more what we're likely to see out of this race at this point in time. I just had a look at Cordell Cologne coming into the pits. He missed his box by a fair margin out there, so he's still struggling. Last driver 5 laps down right now in 13th position, so his issues then continue out there on the circuit. We do have a good race going on right now between Adam State and Ross Banfield, so the race for 6th position out there overall, just a lap down, and this is the lucky dog race out there at this point.
Yeah, Banfield lost that fight to prevent himself dropping off of the lead lap. That was pretty much expected to happen as the run went on. But now he is in that battle with Adam State for the lucky dog spot. And, we've seen how aggressive he was to defend just to try and stay on the lead lap. So it's going to be interesting to see how aggressive he is trying to just get this lucky dog spot back.
Well, he's got a major turn of pace going through 4. It's the most planted I've seen that car out there on the circuit. He's been flying around on that Mustang. Now, what do you look at in terms of a car like this here, Christian, in terms of a car that's feeling maybe like it's very, very tight, it's struggling in the late stage of the stint, little wiggle from Adam State? What do you do to sort of fix the car out there from what you've been seeing today? How would you go about and fix the issues that they've been having late on in stints?
Well, I think you've got to be really careful of is if the car starts out tight, what the solution is not to drive it off the right rear on corner exit, because yeah, you'll gain a little bit of short run back, but what you'll end up doing is you'll just absolutely just kill your long run. Obviously, you'll murder the right rear off the tire, well, off the car, and then you've also been punishing the right front as well, trying to just extract pace from it. So then you're driving out there with essentially no cards to play. You've got no front turn, you've got no drive off. So the trick really is to actually take it pretty easy on corner entry, knowing that it's tight, and just try and not lean on that right front any more than you absolutely have to. And then hope that doing that is going to at least make sure the car doesn't move even more to the side of tight as the run goes on. And then you can just kind of use the better drive off really to make up the difference late in the run. But ideally you want a car that's just on the edge of loose, so that you can underdrive it a little bit with the throttle while the car takes care of the right front for you.
Adam State loses the spot to Ross Banfield, who moves back into lucky dog position with that pass, a crucial pass in terms of this race. And speaking of in terms of this race, David H. Baker, that gap now, 5.5 it was over the line last time. That comes to 5.5 still, so an even match over that last lap then, a 35.4 meeting a 35.4 from Dallas Pataska. This is a crucial phase of the race for the likes of David H. Baker, and who might actually help him right now in terms of this is Trevor Favrovsky just behind, who can essentially say, hey, if I can get by you, I can give you some very good slipstream because I'm quicker and you can latch onto the back of me a bit.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is where as teammates you definitely don't want to be fighting. You want to kind of be helping each other out.
Well, the question is, how quickly can Favrovsky get by and give some credence and give some help? Just the 5 drivers right now on the leading lap of this race here from Homestead Miami Speedway. And this now is the move that Favrovsky gets through, and David H. Baker's just got to follow as long as he can. Those tyres will go very quickly for Trevor Favrovsky. We've seen it time and again, but this is the time where you've really got to pick it up and use as much as you can. Adam State, just in front of that, is due in this lap.
Yeah, and Adam State, having lost that battle, is now got to get himself down onto pit road, and that looks like a pretty clear-cut one more stop from here type strategy he's going to be on to.
Yeah, Adam Thatcher-Ponte just in front of that's just got by Ross Banfield, so he becomes the lucky dog driver. He's done an extra stop in comparison. In the back goes the 51 again. Mark Stevenson letting Adam State know that if you're going to come down into the pits, you're going to have to come down quickly. And Adam State gets himself through. How many times have we seen that little tap there from Mark Stevenson and nobody gone around?
It's happened at least 3 times. That would have been the 4th right there if there'd actually been some contact. So yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that it keeps happening. Actually, it seems like there's maybe a bit of lack of communication going on in terms of Stevenson being aware that cars are pitting in, because it's certainly not the first time, it's not even the second time, it's the 4th time now.
Yeah, it was an early call to come into the pits. It was a lap in advance saying I'm pitting in, so it can be missed out there on the iRacing service, because you get it for, what, about 10 seconds is about as long as it stays up there. Is into the wall just in behind Alexander Russell there goes Ryan Walker, who again finds himself a bit of friendly their work with the barriers at 3 and 4.
Yeah, we've actually seen this a couple of times now, cars getting up into the fence and being able to continue on without any real significant damage.
And that actually just in front was the pass for 3rd. So Alexander Russell through them on David Melnarovic. But the key here is that Alexander Russell has already got that gap down to about 21 seconds here. And you just feel that it's, again, in that wheelhouse with Dallas Pataska, who's going to be due in sometime in and around the next 10 laps.
Yeah, but this is where you've got to remember that Russell is effectively a pit stop behind. So even if he's running him down, he's going to go back to losing out a lot again when they kind of flip around and Pataska's on the fresh tires. This is this thing we keep seeing, and this is why Russell really needs to try and convert the strategy a bit and stop doing the 60-lap runs, because he would be doing a short stint to the end, and the problem is you're not really going to gain that much in the short stint. It's better to try and kind of spread the advantage over 3, but that's the disadvantage he's trying to overcome. And you know, the pace is there now, but as you say, Pataska coming down in say 10 or so, that's the point when it's going to flip back the other way, and it comes down to what Russell chooses to do next.
Very calm is Alexander Russell here. This is all part of his plan, it looks like. Just running through into turns 3 and 4 once again. Car planted 34.7 on that last lap. Again, another 0.7 of a second ahead of Dallas Pataska in terms of pace, and trying to chase down the 14-second margin to David H. Baker, who is in 2nd position out there overall. He's doing a very, very good job of keeping that pace on, but the question still will be asked. Now, Stevenson just in front of a very, very big group of drivers right now. That's Adam State, who's just come out of the pits then, who's just made that way through. Trevor Vavrosky as well just behind, trying to race up to the driver at the front of this group right now, Christian, in Ross Banfield, who's now going through struggle street on his tyres.
Yeah, and we know that 777's not particularly good at the end of a run. But the kind of role reversal there for Stevenson, he nearly got shuffled off the bottom of the track by the fresh-tired Adam State.
Well, would you blame him at that point? Tit for tat at that point, surely, as Mark Stevenson now gets the run out of 4 and is looking to try and race. In fact, that was Adam State getting back through for position as well, which was quite crucial in terms of this one. Stevenson has got to try and do something here, and finds himself in a place where he'd like a bit more, I think, out of this one, and finds himself tucked up behind Banfield. Oh, has a big wiggle going through, and I think behind that as well, Trevor Vavrosky was very alert to that wiggle, was looking to try and pivot hard to the inside just in case something happened.
Yeah, and Stevenson's really kind of behind the 8 ball at this point. It's bad enough being 1 lap down, but being 2 laps down, it's just so difficult to recover from. But, you know, we've seen no cautions throughout the race so far. He's got 4 cars ahead of him that are a lap down. He himself is 2 down. You know, he needs 6 yellows at this point to get back in the race, and it just doesn't look like it's going to happen.
David H. Baker down in the pits. There's a bit of blinking there for one driver then being the 777 of Ross Banfield. We've seen it a number of times before. Vavrosky not happy about it, as he was right underneath the spoiler going through, trying to get things sorted. Melnarovic as well is trying to make some work happen out there on track. So where David H. Baker comes out is going to be very crucial to the final story of this race, and it looks like he's going to be out in and around, maybe just behind Gabriel Roos, as through finally getting that move sorted, then is Trevor Vavrosky. He finds himself through, he gains that spot, and now into the pits once again. Melnarovic this time with Travis Henderson, so a full stop behind, Henderson in the pits.
Yeah, the TFR cars kind of continuing their strategy, and this is about right, you know, to do 53, 54 to the end of the race.
That's pretty much online that they've got at this point, so keep an eye out on that. Melnarovic and Henderson together on circuit now, 4th and 5th, are going to have to try and work together to get themselves through towards the end of this race outright. We still wait for the call of Dallas Pataska to dive down into the pits. He stays out the moment. There's the 10 of Trevor Vavrosky. In comes Dallas Pataska then to make his stop. Lap 162, 106 laps to go. 105 it will be when he crosses the line, and that leaves him 2 52-lap stints between now and the end of this race. This is where the swing and roundabout comes into play with Alexander Russell.
Yeah, and this is where Russell's obviously now going to be the chased as opposed to the chaser, and the gap was down to 12 seconds, but as far as I'm concerned, Russell's still got to stop twice more himself. So you know, it's the same plus 12 seconds is essentially the gap, as it were. But it all depends on what Russell chooses to do at this point and how long he's going to run this for. If I remember correctly, he pit around about 130-ish to go, so he's going to be on that 45-ish lap strategy. I think he could work out, but he's got to actually convert. if he tries to do another 60-lap run, it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. And look at Pataska on his outlap then, just charging through both Trevor Varosky and Mark Stevenson. And just behind him, up in full pace, is David H. Baker right there behind. So it's crucial in terms of that stop. We saw the first two stops. Dallas Pataska was able to get out behind David H. Baker. This time, he's able to get out ahead.
And I think it's actually kind of moving Baker a little bit out of this fight. I thought he would have the long run to contend, but now as it's gone on, you know, he was at one point coming out ahead, and now he's coming out behind, and it's just, yeah. I think he's solidly locked into the second spot, depending on what Russell does, but I think he's just lacking a little bit to challenge Pataska for the win.
Trevor Varosky in the pits, Ryan Walker out the pits then, both making their stops out there. So there's Varosky looking for the 10, there's Ryan Walker coming out of the pits. That'll be the race leader going by Alexander Russell. 13-second lead over Adam Thatcher-Ponte at this point. Pataska 21 seconds adrift at this point in time, but give it about 20 laps and that one should be clawed back without too much trouble at all here in this race. So still a long way to go at this point. At this moment, Alexander Russell knows that he might not be racing for a win. He's racing to get as much as he can out of it. Might be second, might be third, but you still got to keep your eyes open for what could be the final stages of this race, because everyone's still trying to get to their final stop on this one with about 101 laps to go. They'll reach 100 to go as they go through 167 laps run completely green. Probably one of the quickest races that we've had in terms of full oval running all season long.
Yeah, definitely. I think the only one that kind of comes close that I can remember is the Americas region Coke 600. We had one yellow, something like 30 laps into the race, and after that it went green the whole way. So obviously that was quite a quick long race, and you know, it's so far we're seeing the same here with the European region in the finale at Homestead.
Mark Stevenson finding two cars to go through, in Ross Banfield and Gabriel Roos, both of them getting the progress that they're hoping for. And Gabriel Roos actually here is on the leading lap and is not a million miles behind David H. Baker and Dallas Pataska. He's only down at this point by, I'd say, 7 seconds on David H. Baker. So this is a crucial phase of the race. Gabriel Roos is quietly working himself up into top 3 consideration at this point.
Yeah, he is, and to be honest, we don't really talk too much about him being able to do that. Obviously, he's kind of been there, but he's been hovering around that sort of mid-pack area. It's only towards the end of the race where looks like he's really got a handle on the car and is starting to cement himself in that spot.
Adam Thatcher-Ponte then loses second position. That's Dallas Pataska flying by. No surprise there. Thatcher-Ponte on a slightly different strategy to what Dallas is doing at this point, and it's starting to reach that phase where it is going away from him a little bit. So you gotta be alert to the final stages of this race and what Adam Thatcher-Ponte might be doing in comparison to everyone else. Dallas Pataska right now, eyes set on number 27, trying to chase down that gap and regain the race lead. He did so in the last stint, and he's just been looking like he's getting better and better as these stints go on. He's just working his way into that next-gen machinery out there, doing everything that's needed. Chevrolet out there doing a wonderful job. It has been a game of Ford and Chevrolet out there throughout everybody overall. No Toyotas. I wonder why.
I don't know, actually. It is interesting that you say that, and I was thinking about this actually for the real life series the other day, that there's actually not that many Toyota teams out there in comparison to, obviously, Chevrolet has kind of always been sort of the default car, really. And it seems interesting that actually transfers over into the virtual world as well, because there's no difference between these cars. They all cost the same as well. It's just seems like the Chevy is just more popular with fans.
Definitely seems that way, and I'm sure that success in certain machinery will also influence choice as well. So it's always something worth just keeping a small look on. It's getting really congested here behind Alexander Russell, as right now that is going to be David Milnarovic getting the lap back and taking the lead as we focus on the number 33 car there of David H. Baker. Trying to stay in range of Das Pataska, is about 3 seconds off at this point. But there is Pataska. It is getting crowded behind Alexander Russell because you've still got Ryan Walker who's there, and you've got Travis Henderson also trying to get back that lap to stay with Milnarovic as their strategy into the final stages comes into play. And a little blink from Alexander Russell there would be a bit scary on that inside.
Yeah, see, for me, I think Russell should be pitting at the latest at 90 to go. But as you can see already, Pataska out there on those fresh tires, that gap is almost coming back down to back down to zero again. So I don't think that Russell can afford to pit after Pataska has already passed him on track. I think that's just bad news. I think if he wants any chance of being able to close the gap, he needs to be pitting whilst he's still ahead in terms of track position, and hoping that his pace is enough to kind of turn it around a bit. But at the moment it does look difficult. Pataska's effectively got, I would say, 25-second lead if Russell was to pit at this point.
Definitely looks it. Definitely seems like it. It's definitely going to be one of those days, really, where you sort of sit down and say, what can you do? Cordell Cologne, by the way, has made so much contact with that right-hand side that his car has been pulled over for about the last 30 laps. So we've got 12 runners then in this field. Tom Dreiling, of course, pitting the car early after about 6 laps of this race. No confidence, missed the start by about 4, decided to pull the car over early over the course of the run. Alexander Russell holding Ryan Walker back here a little bit. Dallas Pataska's just got Adam State to pass before he reaches that group, that gap down 3.7, now down 3.2 by our timing as it continues to close and claw back more and more. This is where the race does get interesting in terms of who does what, who finds what. David H. Baker threw on Adam Fatcher-Ponte, who is really struggling as well now at this stage of the race. He tries to extend his stint to a stage where he can get 2:45s to the end.
Yeah, and I think Fatcher-Ponte's actually done quite well over the course of the race. Obviously, he found out pretty early on that he didn't have the long run pace that he needed in the car. He's adjusted strategy to suit that, and it's coming away from it quite well off, I would say. Obviously, not a race-winning car, but he's going to be in the top 5, I think.
Yeah, and that's all you can ask for, really, in the championship finale. Just make sure that you get as much as you can out of it. A old school feel to racing like this, a full 267 laps. No stage racing in the major series, and I wonder at what point, really, Christian, when you take a look at a race like this, you just sort of say, you know what, maybe it might be useful if there's stage racing for next season when it comes to the majors.
So my thing with stage racing is I'm not a fan of stage racing. I don't like it. I don't like having a race within the race. I'm really not a fan of handing out points halfway and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I understand that to some degree it's good in an endurance context. Obviously, it happens with races like Le Mans and a lot of races in IMSA and so on. And I understand it, and I understand from a team's perspective that it makes sense there because you don't want to run a 12 or even a 24-hour race, and if you're not classified at the end, come home with no points because you've obviously ran your car, you've burnt a lot of hours on the car, and it's cost you a lot to do that. So I understand it from a team's perspective, but from a fan perspective, I don't really like it. I feel like it should only be one checkered flag in the race, and if there was anything to be done, I would just prefer the races to be half length. I mean, I don't see why, to be honest, a race like this needs to be 267 laps long. It could have been half as long, and it would have been just as exciting, you know, and maybe even more exciting. There would have been more battling. There would have been less kind of cruising and riding around, and I prefer that approach to having stage races.
Well, this race now changes as Alexander Russell falls behind Dallas Pataska, and with 88 laps to go, no sign of a pit stop in the foreseeable future at this point. Travis Henderson doing well as Gabriel Roos has come in and out of the pits then, and is taking then the 240 lap pit stops then to get to the end. So it's going to have to drive pretty much with everything there. Milnarovic and Travis Henderson on your screen, 5th and 6th positions right now as they look to try and work together on their strategies to get themselves home to the end of this race.
And you know who still hasn't pit? Alexander Russell, and now he's 2.6 seconds behind Dallas Pataska.
Yeah, it's going to be a long road, and I think Alexander Russell knows that this isn't a race for the victory as such anymore. This is a race to see how far I can go. Someone may look at it and go, well, you're just dropping time. It's not a guarantee that there's anyone in the air saying do something otherwise. I think the endurance-style strategy out there is you always go till your tank runs out. And that might just be the strategy that Alexander Russell looks at and thinks of as Adam Thatcher-Ponte now is going to think about making progress towards the pits in the next lap or so. I just really think that when you get a series like this where drivers aren't necessarily oval drivers, they don't always have that oval mind of, okay, we need to chop down the tree, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's totally understandable. You know, I mean, if he's out there trying to work out his entire strategy as he goes and whatnot, it's pretty tricky to do it on the fly. Even if you've got strategy tools available to you, it's not easy to be driving and kind of doing the math out in your head to figure out what you should be doing. But at the same time, I feel like he knows at this point that he's going to still have to stop twice. So if you know that, then like what's the play here? Why not try and evenly split it up? I mean, there is one scenario where this works out, and it's if he runs out the tank and then he comes out, or you know, before he runs out the tank, a caution comes out and Pataska's already pit. Well, you know that everyone's going to pit to get another set of tires for the end of the race, and then that would cycle him to the lead. But I hate playing that kind of game because it's so much risk that it will work out that way. You've got no guarantee of it. It's better to always just run your own strategy and just hope that it plays out.
There's a lot of what-ifism about it, that sort of play. So you've always got to be very alert to how you make that happen out there on track. So still a long way to go yet here in this one. Gabriel Roos and Adam Thatcher-Ponte 9th and 10th, both on very similar strategies now to the end of this race together on circuit. There is the 10 of Trevor Vavrovsky right now, trying to race with Ross Banfield and Adam State. What a great race this is, 6th, 7th and 8th. I think with the newer tyres out there, Vavrovsky is going to try and get past both of them out there overall. Is going to try and go to that inside to make it work. Adam State stuck on that high line. That's going to put Ross Banfield's Udox Oliver car through on that inside track and should be enough to get that clear as Adam State grabs the wall coming out of 2 and very nearly doesn't have anything, but takes the toe all the way to 3 and 4. That would have shaken you up a little bit in the wall there in the scrap like that.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's getting very close to it again in 3 and 4. He has managed to keep it out of it, but fallen way back on the 777 of Banfield. But this is bad news for Banfield. He's now not in lucky dog position.
No, he very much isn't. Trevor Vavrovsky trying to chase that down, but already that gap about 7 seconds. Now David Baker is going to start thinking about second position and outright here in this race, trying to get past Alexander Russell for position here. 81 laps to go as we focus on 4th and 5th still, Milnarovic and Henderson. I do want to take a look at David H. Baker because there is one car in between them right now. And this is where it's key. This next lap and a half is where the race is going to be pretty much fought for number 33, who has just driven a wonderfully astute race out here today and is looking to continue to do so with 80 laps to go, 79 to go when they next reach the line.
Yeah, it really has. He's kind of slowly dropped out of the fight for the win with Pataska, but to be able to say that, you know, you're within 8 seconds and probably around about 10 seconds at the flag, that's a really good job for a full distance race. I mean, his pace has been very good. He's stuck to his strategy well. He's made no mistakes. He's getting a little bit held up here by Russell, but that's not really going to make too much difference to where he finishes today. He's locked solid, I feel, in that second spot.
Adam Ponti sets the fastest lap of the race, and it's worth talking track conditions because they're dropping quickly. It was 41 degrees at the start of racing action. It's now down to 37 as trying to pick it up on the inside is David H. Baker trying to get past Alexander Russell. He's struggling to find a way to make that happen. Dropped a second on that lap to Dallas Pataska. Finally gets the all clear and goes around and makes that happen, but this is now a cooling track, and it's only going to get quicker and quicker into that final stint.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is where it kind of plays into some of the cars that have been worse. It's the only really way I can put it. Kind of in the early part of the race where the track was hot and obviously low rubber state. It's going to play into their favor. It's going to help them out a little bit. They're going to be able to push a little bit harder without having to worry about dropping off so much at the end of the run. So, you know, might see a little bit of moving around as we get closer to the end of the race. But what we honestly need is we need a yellow to pack everyone back up. Because I feel like the dynamics of everyone's cars and kind of how much everyone's learned throughout the race has now changed so much to at the beginning. And you think that it was really the first two runs that sort of defined the race. So it would be nice to have everyone stacked back together so we could see if anything has changed since then, because I feel like it has. I feel like drivers like Roos have gotten better. Obviously Russell, this is totally a case of what could have been. Russell could have fought for the win here, and it's unfortunate we're not going to see that. As I believe that is a satellite car coming down on the pit road.
That's Adam State in the 118 making that stop, and Alexander Russell makes the call. He's coming in this lap with 76 laps to go in his race. So this is crucial in terms of how long you leave it out there, because that's going to lead him down to just a 14-lap stint, you'd feel, towards the end. A 13-lap stint to end that race. That's a gamble.
It is, and I don't feel like it's going to help at all, to be honest. Yeah, he can run those 14 laps at full pace and whatever, but he's going to be so far behind that I don't think it's really going to matter. I mean, he's about to go one lap down again here. Yeah, those two, Milnarevic and Henderson working together. They both find their way through. Hasn't Travis Henderson just got so much better whilst he's been running behind David Milnarevic and just having that focus in front of him? It looks like he had a very, very loose machine in the end of the opening stint, struggling to get much working as he potted about with the same strategy as Trevor Vavrosky. The moment he got with David Milnarevic, he looks a completely different driver. Yeah, he absolutely does, but kind of on the backside of this, I feel like Milnarevic has actually lost a bit of pace over the course of the race. We saw him sticking pretty good with Baker at the beginning, and well, after that stop where he slid through the box, Baker's just been lights out. He's completely left him. But obviously it is helping Henderson out here. He's now in with a chance of a third spot. I actually don't think it will be third spot once it kind of all shuffles out with Russell, but we'll have to see. We certainly will. The 150 of Adam Ponti just got through Mark Stevenson, who goes exploring. But at least right now in front, you got Vavrosky and David H. Baker now. Now, this is interesting because Vavrosky's trying to race to get his lap back. It's about 10 seconds to do that. David H. Baker on the low line will also have to allow Ryan Walker potentially, who's 4 laps down. I don't know how he's managed to get 4 laps down, but he's 4 laps down, last runner in the field, to try and get into it. And Ponti here going to try and get past Vavrosky, and this is going to be 4 positions. So this is an awkward scenario where you might have to push it 3 wide. Ponti with some fresh tyres. Where do you go? Well, the middle is the obvious place, I feel. You know that people are going to run the top, people are going to run the white line, and nobody's trying to really run the middle. I think that's where you've got to go. I mean, you've got the tyres. Yeah, it's going to work out. It's just obviously a bit tricky. He hasn't been forced to do the 3 wide. He's going to be able to just go by them one at a time. But yeah, you just got to place the car where everybody isn't and hope that the tyre advantage is enough. And it looks like it was for him there. Vavrosky getting a wiggle off a 2, and through goes Ponti. Up then into 5th position.
in this race and has a lot of time to chase up to get through. Alexander Russell is just behind this, and he's got the freshest tyres of anyone as he tries to find a way to the outside. Oh, my word. Stevenson barged to that inside line as they go around 1 and 2. That was nearly a big wreck in terms of those two drivers there. Only just enough room given between them. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we've seen a couple of car contacts throughout the race, but we haven't seen anything that's actually tipped someone sideways enough to bring out a caution yet. And people are getting a little bit more aggressive as we get towards the end of the race, but everybody's still staying clean for the most part. And that's one of the advantages of having not too many cars on track, although it does seem like we've had almost the entire field here on the front stretch that lap. It definitely looked that way, didn't it? And suddenly you get the traffic that all comes around. Pavlovsky then will lose out a position going through as they all try and figure out what they want. Ryan Walker will then go, and then Thatcher Ponte will need to be chased down in the final stages of this race. This is an all-important run as Ryan Walker takes that high line, stays out of the way of everyone and goes through. Dallas Pataska all on his own right now with an 11-second margin at the front of this field over David Baker as they run about this track. So this is probably right about now the crucial phase of this race. Get as much as you can out of it to really try and charge forward, really try and open up what is an incredible race so far in terms of pace. But Alexander Russell, this is where the hard yards are coming in. These are going to be the positions he'll have to make in the final 14 laps if he continues on the same stint that he did earlier on in this race. Yeah, absolutely. And right now I feel like he's got a chance of getting into that third place fight. I think Baker's probably out of reach, but Melnitz and Henderson are kind of touring around about 28 seconds behind the lead right now. They're on the verge of going a lap down before the end of this race, but I think Russell can get up and pass those guys with the amount of laps he'll have in that final stint. It just all comes down to whether it works out for him with a caution or without. I think Russell's best chance is still to have a yellow come out before he makes his final stop. Well, there hasn't been one yet, and we've driven 201, if not 200, on second lap we're on right now, and there hasn't been one. Thatcher Ponte gets passed by Alexander Russell, as through will also go Adam State, looking to get a lap back then as he makes his progress around and tries to get back into range. So those drivers looking to really go and make something of it. 66 laps to go here at Homestead on a completely green run. And what I noticed actually from moving this Homestead race away from being the final round of the championship was attendance figures at the most recent NASCAR race, Christian. And I thought that was something that really sort of shocked me about how attendance sort of works. Homestead used to be this really big, it's the end, it's the championship, everyone's going to come here and watch the end of the championship. But now without that championship allure, how does Homestead as a circuit bring back its fans? If I'm honest, I don't really know. I mean, it puts on a great race, but I think obviously having the championship round is a big deal in terms of draw. And to be honest, I think Homestead was a better place to have a championship round than other tracks that we've seen and where we're at now. But obviously it didn't stay that way, and now it's kind of in a tough spot because yeah, it's a great track, but it's in a weird spot in the season where it hasn't been for a while, and it's kind of in that sort of no man's land point in the season too, where it's, you know, it's just not that. I mean, it is an important race, but it's not as it was, and that's always difficult. I mean, we see it with a lot of tracks that have two races as well. The best examples are the ones that have a day and a night race. I mean, the night race is almost always more popular for somewhere like Bristol. So yeah, I think it's difficult when you don't have that draw of being a major important race. Does it also come around in terms of sort of how American sports as a whole sort of works, where you have these really long series? Something like the NFL, for example, is something that has a short, condensed 18-week, 17-game season in which you know that every game, bar maybe a couple over the course of the season, has a weight and meaning. You stretch something out like baseball, it's 170-odd games, 180 games, and you know that some games are going to be a lull and aren't going to be worth as much weight in others. Do you think NASCAR suffers from that same problem of maybe it's got too long of a schedule and as such, races lose meaning and lose weight and lose understanding?
Yeah, and I think an area where it's definitely kind of made that problem worse is in the regular season, where there's the win and you're in sort of system now. I think that's contributed to that because, you know, obviously there's the argument that while it means every race is just as important, my debate to that would be that it doesn't, because you know that, say, the guy who wins Daytona pretty much doesn't really need to turn up until it gets to playoffs, and that kind of takes a little bit out of it for me. I think if the regular season was all points to get through to playoffs, then it would mean that the races were more important than just, you know, going out there and winning them. And I'm not saying it's easy to go out there and win them, it's not, but I think it would add some importance to it instead of it feeling kind of like a bit like it's just sort of a time-filling exercise until it gets to the playoffs. So I do think that having less races is sometimes better. And to be honest, that's kind of what we've seen too, really, if you think about it. We've seen a lot of tracks that had multiple dates have been cut down to only having one, and in some cases two. You know, we don't go to Charlotte what feels like 5 times a year anymore. And when we do, we go the Roval as well as the oval, so it's a little bit different, and I think that's a good thing. I think making sure that the races are all different is an important aspect of kind of having fans go to them. And I think one thing that plays for Homestead is really probably the location. Obviously, you know, it's Florida, you got Daytona and everything, but otherwise there isn't really any races that are kind of down there, so I think that helps it out a bit. It's not like kind of one of those ones where it's, you know, so much in the middle that you got like 3, 4, 5 tracks that you could all go to, and you're kind of picking one race over others. It's if you live near, it's a good race to go to.
It's a good race to go to, as Davin Malnarovich and Travis Henderson have been overtaken by the number 27 of Alexander Russell, who moves himself back up then into 3rd position with 58 laps to go here from Homestead Miami Speedway. Let us take ourselves away then for the final time. We'll bring ourselves home to the finish then here from Homestead. This, your championship finale of the European Major Series, round 14 of 14. Dallas Pataska are ready already to finish in style.
This is your chance to get behind the wheel. The opportunity to race just like the pros. From the grassroots levels, where we all got our start, to the most popular race cars on the planet. From the fairgrounds of Nashville to the high banks of Daytona, to tracks that will never be forgotten. Realistic driving, intense competition, all from the comfort of your own home. This is the ultimate motorsports simulation. This is iRacing.
Apparently, pit stops are being handed out like hotcakes right now. Top four drivers into the pits. Pataska in, Banfield just coming out of the pits. Milnarovic has just found himself in, and David H. Baker just finds himself out then, which leaves Alexander Russell out in charge of the field, but he wasn't able to close down the gap as much as he would have liked, which means that his race is going to be with Travis Henderson and co to try and hold on to what is third position outright in this one overall. It's been a really marvelous race that we've had out here today, and it's only going to continue to be so as they go through. No cautions so far, 53 laps to go. But it has been marvellous in the sense that we've had clean racing, Christian. The action out there really spread itself out after about lap 100. And from that point onwards, it's been just a case of trying to survive in this race, as Travis Henderson now will make the call to dive down into the pits.
Yeah, and that's actually the second time Henderson's tried to make it to pit road. He tried last time round, and he missed it. So that's a huge deficit for him against in his fight against Malmoritz.
Yeah, that's going to certainly hurt him in terms of what is wanted. Adam Thatcher-Ponte then is dispatched by Dallas Pataska out there on circuit. And this is the sort of time and place where these pit stops are crucial. Thatcher-Ponte, you'd feel, is going to come in about the next 10 or 11 laps, make his stop, and then try and make a charge to stop Alexander Russell, who, if we think he's going to do what we think he's going to do, is going to come down in about 37 laps from now. Try and make his strategy work late on. So this is where drivers want to be, in the position where they are the last one to pit, but not by too much so they don't sacrifice all that time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always the thing. You don't want to be the first to pit. You don't want to be, the last by multiple laps to pit. You want to be towards the tail end of the last guys, if you know what I mean. But with Russell, I'm gonna be surprised if he doesn't cut this run in half and change it up, because otherwise he's resigning himself to really having no shot at it.
Well, it's going to be down to driver preference at this point, but there is Dallas Pataska, number 23, and we talk about this being a championship finale, a championship that was wrapped up very much in the later stages of this season, and basically leaving this final round, the final 2 rounds of this championship, as under lock and key. He's been someone who has turned up and has put everything together, and really it's been the late run of form which has put him head and shoulders above everybody else. He has been untouchable in the final 5 rounds. Yeah,
it really has. Obviously, the beginning of the season, the pace was there, and he was in that tight fight with Sean Campbell. Campbell's season kind of went away from him by virtue of not turning up to the last couple of rounds, but there was a bit of a turning point, and it was in the Austrian F1 race where Campbell had that big incident off the curb, and that's really what sort of brought Pataska back into the fight points-wise. And then obviously they were on top of each other until Campbell wasn't able to make races.
Milnarovic here. Yeah. Since then, of course, Milnarovic then through on the inside of Adam State. They move 4 positions. State still due to pit. Mark Stevenson just in front of them as well is going to have to get out of the way of these two, who are a lap ahead of him at this point, and it's all about drivers trying to chase. Into the pits comes Trevor Vavrovsky for his final run, you'd feel. 47 laps his stint's going to be to end this race outright, and now he'll be looking to try and make that progress through. There are drivers to keep eyes out on. Gabriel Roos is going to be one of them in terms of his run through. Thatcher-Ponte, of course, definitely another, but it was all about the early stage of this race, which really set this run up. 2 drivers, of course, Stevenson and Russell, both found themselves going through. Thatcher-Ponte due into the pits this time by, but it was those 2 drivers who got that drive-through penalty for jumping the start that have basically said, this is what the race is going to be. You 2 have to recover. And look how slow Thatcher-Ponte's going. Only 120 Ks as he exits the banking.
Yeah, I think he pulled that up a bit more than he needed to, if I'm honest. It looked like he nearly needed to accelerate up to the pit cone.
Yeah, and this is the final stage of the race. This is where tiredness can come in if you're not used to doing oval-style racing. And it's very easy just to drop a tyre, drop a wheel, coming down into the pits. It's very easy just to have I've been racing for 2 hours and 10 minutes, and suddenly, whoop, there it goes.
Yeah,
there it went.
With the big moment there coming off of 2. He's got the 10 car to his outside of Vavrovsky, 2 laps down, trying to recover after, I believe, his final stop. So he's not waiting around for anyone. But yeah, Homestead is a pit entry. You wouldn't think it was difficult with the entry actually being so far kind of away. There's a couple of oval tracks where the entry's earlier at the exit of the turn, but it is actually surprisingly difficult to get the car pulled up and turned down into pit road without getting into those barrels.
It is difficult, and it's a very narrow entrance into the pits, really, compared to a lot of other American-style oval circuits, too. So you see a lot of drivers that try and come in, take the full oval spec, but there's no real need, so to speak, to use the full of that infield run going through that long left-hander that you normally see, the Roval style that's certainly out there. And really, actually, as a Roval, this Homestead Roval, especially when it came to iRacing in the early stages of what iRacing had, when it didn't have a number of the tracks, Homestead Roval was one of those really cool tracks you go out there and race. You don't really see it anymore in terms of what goes out there. In fact, that Homestead track, this Homestead track, was the iRacing Bragging Rights Invitational, the very first one.
Was it really? I did not know that. But yeah, I actually think it's pretty good. Road course, it's just not... it's not ran very much anymore, as you say.
It is a shame that it isn't run as much, and I would like to see it more run out there. But now is the time and the place where drivers have to go through. Thatcher Ponte come out with those fresh tyres, and that is a Ross Banfield deciding, you know what, I haven't battled for 50 laps, I might as well start again.
Yeah, and honestly, this is the time to do it. You know, I mean, at the beginning and the mid, wow, that was a pretty aggressive chop off there into 1. That could have been our first caution very easily. Fassi Ponte, very kind to let him get away with that one.
He'll just get the drive off the exit, though, and try and get it that way on 777. The 150 trying to get down low, trying to take this one away, but he's really buffeting about as he goes through the mid part of the corner. He had 2 real swerves of the wheel to try and get that all pointed. Finally gets the grip off the exit. Looked like he lost all the air on it.
Yeah, it really did. And this is 2 cars here that we know are not particularly great long run cars. And they're going at it pretty hard here, which is an interesting decision when they've got to do 40 more laps.
Yeah, I'd say. But Thatcher Ponte finds his way through, gets his spot, and now we'll have to go and give chase once again out there at this point in time. So still a long way to go, 40 laps, and it seems weird to say that when we've done already 227 revolutions, 228 revolutions of this circuit. So we've still got a long way to go. But these 40 laps, sometimes they feel like 400 laps, Christian, when you know you've done so much and there is still that bit to go and you're just hanging on and just hoping that you've still got feeling in your right foot to keep it planted, feeling in your fingers to get the steering wheel turned.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, the last run was probably one of the hardest. I feel like the other most difficult run of the race is right before you get to halfway, because you know you've obviously ran so long already, and you kind of looking at it and thinking, wow, there's still half of this to go. But then after that, it gets a little bit easier. But as you say, when it comes down to the last run and you're trying to get a little bit more from everything, especially if you're in a battle, yeah, then that's the point. That's the point when you start to feel it. And obviously, once you've finished, you're kind of wondering how you managed to actually do it.
Yeah, and it's sometimes that element that you see out there that drivers are trying to work it out. There's your leader, Alexander Russell, who is doing a good enough job to stave off Dallas Pataska, but that gap's coming down by 1 second a lap. And the good news is that the longer that he goes out along on this stint like this, Christian, the less time that Dallas Pataska will eat into him per lap. because of the fact that there is that sort of plateauing of the tyre. The more that Dallas Pataska uses, Russell effectively gets closer to the canvas and doesn't have that much grip to fall away even more than he's got. He's doing really well, running 34.7 still at this stage. Dallas Pataska right now only doing 34.1s that last time by, so that's just 0.6 of a second.
It is, but obviously you've got to remember that Russell's about to lose around about 30 seconds with his pit stop here, so he has kind of shuffled out to being almost exactly a pit stop behind, which I think is unfortunate because without that penalty it would have been a very, very close race, I think, between himself and Pataska.
Brian Walker just behind, side by side with with Gabriel Roos there, so 3 satellite cars all together, and Roos will comfortably go through, gain one of his 2 laps back that he needs to. Russell gets so close to the wall coming out of 4. Had to be careful about that. It's very easy just to tap the rear and say, oops, round you go. But those 2 behind, Melnarovic, Walker, and then, of course, the aforementioned Dallas Pataska will be looking to try and take that race lead back again one final time. In fact, Russell is going to split it half and half. He's going to dive into the pits then on this lap.
Well, at least I can understand this decision. I think that he would have been better off doing this a lot sooner, but this might actually help him out here. He is going to be running everyone ahead of him down. Obviously, no chance of the victory at this point. There's no way he's going to run down 30+ seconds with only 34 laps to go, but when you look at it and you think Baker, Melner, yeah, they're definitely up for grabs.
They certainly are. It's about 12 seconds between Pataska and David H. Baker out there. So second, you would say, is in the offing. Melnarovic will try and get himself back through. It depends on the stop. So Melnarovic, I think, will be something to get. Question is, will everyone else out there at this point in time, as we focus on those 3 right now going around the circuit together. Just coming out of the pits now then is Alexander Russell, so he'll be behind one Mr. David Melnarovic. Travis Henderson is a little bit further behind, and this, at least right now, is going to be Alexander Russell ahead of Henderson and in 4th. I think it gives him a good shot at second here. He's got a really good chance.
Yeah, I would agree. He's obviously going to have the best tyres out of anyone as it comes down to the end of the race. I think his goal out of the box needs to be getting himself back onto the lead lap, just in case there is a caution. I mean, he is the lucky dog car, but that will still put him to the tail end of the field if we do get a yellow. So you don't want that. He's got to try and get up to Pataska, get himself back on the lead lap, and then start working on getting past Melneritz and seeing if he can run that gap to Baker down. It's going to be tough, but I think it might be doable.
Chase is very much on at this point in time. Dallas Pataska, your leader. David H. Baker second. David Melnarovic in 3rd place. Alexander Russell 4th. Travis Henderson 5th. Adam Fatcher-Ponte 6th. And 7th position, the 777 of Ross Banfield at this point. Pataska trying to pick his way around David Melnarovic, who at this point could just become the lucky dog, leaving just 2 drivers then out on the leading lap of this race, running through this left of 3 and 4, and Melnarovic really riding up the circuit, giving Dallas Pataska his what for. He's not going to have to drive off the exit as number 23, your race leader. Melnarovic still wants this lead lap.
Yeah, he absolutely does, and I think it's worth fighting for at this point in the race. It's a pretty big advantage to be one of only 3 cars on the lead lap. He's not going to be able to hold off Pataska. Pataska now totally clear of him. But whilst this has been happening, Russell is joining this pack here. You see him already there on screen. It's going to be very, very easy for him to pick off the 69. He's going to have minimal risk of being trapped a lap down here, and he's going to make his way on past Pataska pretty easily, I think. I definitely see the possibility that he could finish second in this race.
Well, 29 laps to go. He did a 33.5 that last time by. He was 1.2 seconds quicker than Dallas Pataska. He could chase this down. It could be close. He's got to continue this pace for the entire race. 1.2 seconds a lap quicker than Dallas Pataska. He's got 33 seconds to chase. It's close.
Yeah, but the tire's gonna plateau off, and it's, you know, the advantage is gonna go away. I have never seen somebody run down effectively 1 second a lap to overhaul the 1 lap deficit. I don't think this is doable for the race win. I think it's doable for second spot, but even then it's going to be tricky, as we see Mark Stevenson actually puts in the fastest lap of the race. But unfortunately for him, it's pretty meaningless. He's down there in 11th spot in no man's land. He's 2 laps ahead of Walker. He's got a lap back on state, and that's really just for bragging rights at this point.
Forgive me for being an eternal optimist for this race, but I'm an eternal optimist for this race. I hope something happens towards the end of it. But yes, that fastest lap from Mark Stevenson, that's sort of come about out of nowhere, really. Just, there's a fastest lap for you, why not? And it's not really there. Now, Dallas Pataska's got an issue here because he's having to deal with the likes of Adam State and Ryan Walker's there, and Milnarevic is still in the picture. He's dicing about with traffic here, and this is going to be costing him a little bit. And the last place you want to be in the final stages of this race is in a pack, and he's absolutely slap bang in the middle of one.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, we know that he's pretty much safe as a leader. Nobody's going to challenge him. This is not what you want. It's almost tempting to drop to the back of the tail of this grouping and just let it get on with it. But at the same time, Melnitz is still trying to get back on the lead lap, and I'm a bit surprised at that because Pataska cleared him, and I thought that was done. I thought Pataska was just going to drive away at that point, but it's really not happened. Obviously, the 118 Estate, the 97 of Walker now coming into this as well, and you know, Walker's out there really not fighting for anything. But the good news for Pataska is that 2 of the 3 cars that he's next to are teammates, so then they're not going to make life difficult for him, which is you know, better than if he was around kind of either independents or you know, team members of others that he was racing against.
Well, that's always going to be useful, but they're not going to try anything, so to speak, as they go out there on circuit. Now, I am keeping a close eye on the 3 cars out there that are trying to chase: Milnarevic, Henderson, and Fatchaponti. Fatchaponti's the last lap, I think, so this lap coming through is going to be the key to decide how those 3 sort of end and play out their racing, because over the line goes Fatchaponti, does a 34.8. Henderson did a 35 flat and a 34.8 for Milnarevic. So all very similar, 4th, 5th, and 6th, all sort of evenly spread out at this moment in time. So there's not really much they can do. The fastest of all those drivers, really, is Trevor Favrovsky and Gabriel Roos, who are going to be the 2 that are maybe going to try and claw their way around this circuit to bring some gap back.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, everyone out there now is on their final set of tires, so that the die is basically cast at this point. It is what it is, and you just got to try and do what you can with it. That gap for Russell has not really come down as fast as it needs to. He's behind the target. He's 26 seconds with 23 laps to go. So don't get me wrong, I would love to see it and to see him get close, but I don't think it's happening. Now, 12 seconds, half a second a lap. Yeah, I think that could be on.
It could. And Alexander Russell here, this is going to be close. But to David H. Baker, that's the key. He's got about 2/3 of a lap to claw that back in terms of pretty much where you are on circuit. This is going to be a really interesting development between now and the end of this race. Keep your eyes on it. It's no guarantee here at this one that they're going to get themselves through all the way to the end, and they've got exactly what they want. So still a long race, and of course drives will be struggling towards the end of those stints, and those tires that are going off, we might see something happen towards the end. We've seen nothing of it, and most of the issues where drivers have struggled with tires, they just sort of power them off of the barriers at 1 and 2 or 3 and 4. We haven't seen that, oh, the back end's just completely looped around sort of scenario. It's been some very tight, I just understeer instead of oversteer.
Yeah, and it's actually surprising we haven't seen anyone completely lose their car. I mean, we have seen some out there that are very loose. You know, the amount of times we've seen them loose off of 2 and 4 with some really epic slides, but no one's actually lost the car yet.
Let's get a look, comparison of times between second and third. There's David H. Baker on screen. 1.2, 1.3, 1.3, 1.2. It's a very consistent amount of time that's being dropped. A 35 flat again. 3 straight 35, 4 straight. They're all 35 flats from David H. Baker right now. Alexander Russell is over the line, 1.1 only that time, but that's because there's a bit of traffic in front of Russell that would have scrubbed him a tiny bit of speed through 3 and 4.
Yeah, but you've got to give it to David Baker for having that level of consistency. Normally the reference is to be within a tenth every time. I mean, that was pretty much closer to that. Some contact ahead.
Spread it through the middle. Oh my goodness, the confidence needed to do that as Gabriel Roos and Ross Banfield came together in their race for 8th place. That's confidence from Alexander Russell. You're all clear. You got it done.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to take moves like that if you think they're already almost a second or more behind him. You can't afford to lose that in the battle that he's in. But speaking of that battle behind, the 323 and the 777 have been going at it for nearly 100 laps now, I feel. Those two are locked together.
They are, and I tell you what, Ross Banfield does not want to give this up. He lost 0.4 of a second, though, on that last lap, and it's just starting to eke away, and I think Gabriel Roos has got eyes of grandeur a little bit further up the field, at the likes of Trevor Pavlovsky, for example. That's where he's trying to reach, and if he can do that, he'll be absolutely fine. He'll be home and hosed, and there'll be something waiting for him as he goes. So an important phase of the race, absolutely, but these drivers know 17 laps to go. Gap, though, between second and third is really clawing back. David H. Baker's trying everything with his 35 flats, that consistency that he's had. Alexander Russell, once again, though, is going to claw back another 1.1 seconds. That gap comes down. It's 6.3.
Yeah, I think it's on the cards that he's going to get there. And, I'm just keeping an eye on actually Pataska, and he's stuck in this group of his own teammates, but they're actually checking him up pretty good. He's actually losing quite a bit of pace. The gap's down to 18 seconds back to Russell in third, and I think Pataska's actually had enough of this. He's trying to get ahead of him now.
Yep, gets through. Decides he wants to lead that small pack that he's got. Adam State, he makes the pass on. Ryan Walker's there. David Melmarovic still there. The number 69 car in 4th position overall. And still trying to give chase to maybe something more. Keep Travis Henderson behind at bay, which he is doing. Thatcher Ponte's not got the pace to chase it down. Nor to Vavrovsky. Those gaps pretty much opening out then as they go through. So it's down to Alexander Russell, who started the day with a trip down through the pits after the end of the opening lap. And he might end the day in 2nd position after what was an incredible drive back through the field. So there is still that chance that for car 27, that 2nd position is very much on. And with the way that he's driving, he's just dipped for the first time into the 34s. So he's used a lot of that tyre to get there. He's now got to try and just make sure he can stay there, because he'll be burning, effectively he'll be burning the weight from both ends the way that he's attacking.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's got to. He's got no choice. He's really got to get everything he can out of the car. He's got to do as much as he can to get to Baker as early as possible, giving the most tire advantage by the time he gets there. Yes, he's going to be burning them off, but there's no point getting there with 3 laps to go and only having a quarter tenth or whatever to be able to pass with. That's going to make your life difficult. When you know you're only racing one person, you just need to get after it, try and close the gap down, get the pass done, and then if you need to, then you can kind of work on holding on. But I mean, I don't think he's going to need to. He's got the best tires of anybody out there. This should be, to be honest, quite a trivial pass for him when he gets to Baker. But at the same time, man, if I was Russell, I'd be absolutely gutted about that incident on the start, because he has overcome the penalty. He's actually net positive gain on Pataska if you negate the penalty. So he would have won this race on pace.
Just saw Ryan Walker have the biggest hit into the wall through turn 3, and that gave him enough of a run to get back ahead of Dallas Pataska off the exit. So Ryan Walker here I think just starting to understand that there's a lot about this circuit right now you can sort of learn and do, and it's always trying to go there. On board with Alexander Russell then, as he now has firmly in his sights David H. Baker, as we've got 12, 11 now laps to go. Baker looking very steady at this point, but Russell, you can see the look in his eyes. He's going to look, one glance, two glances, three glances over to the right, four, still there. Right, I've got myself down to the inside. Thank you very much. That's second position, and now the chase is on.
Yeah, and that's exactly how you got to pull off moves like that. When you're running somebody down, I mean, obviously the pace advantage he's got is completely massive, but even when the pace advantage is less, that's exactly how you got to pull off moves. You got to run up to them. You got to immediately go, I'm going here, and pull it off right away. You don't want to sit behind people. If you sit behind people, that makes them think they can hold you off. You don't want any of that. You want to catch someone so fast that they don't even think about trying to fight it. And that's exactly what he did there. There's too much time and not enough laps for him to get up to Pataska. But man, if it's 15 or 20 laps, we would be in for a finish here.
We're about 5 laps short of what is wanted for Alexander Russell. He's closed 9/10 in that last lap while making the pass. The gap's 11.4, so it's going to have to take a mistake of some variety to bring this one back. And every lap that goes through, the demands are more and more. Only 0.8 of a second this time. The tyres are starting to go away a bit more now, and there's not much that can be done to claw that gap back in terms of a race which, to be quite perfectly honest, has stayed green, at least at this point, the entire way around. And we have seen some amazing racing action bringing itself through at Homestead Miami Speedway. We've seen some good running out there. You can see those massive marks, actually, as they've gone around of where the tyre rubber has been left on the side of the wall, just from the amount of time drivers have hit the outside wall trying to run that high line. Does go to show you today that it has been a really tough day, despite the no cautions, and despite as well the fact that we haven't really seen any retirements. Tom Dreiling and Cordell Cologne, 2 drivers from the back, the only 2 drivers who have failed to find a finish today.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other driver that I think has struggled somewhat would be that 97 Ryan Walker. I think he's responsible for quite a few of those marks up on the outside wall at this point.
7 laps to go, gap down, 10 seconds here in this race for Alexander Russell, but he's not got enough time with Dallas Pataska. It's gonna need some help from number 23, who has been the standout once again this season, and has been looking every which way to try and just cement this up. He is, as things stand, if he takes the victory here, surely home and dry when it comes to what he needs to do before December 3rd and Legacy Day, the Iron Warrior Demo Derby, the 2022 playoffs, and then, of course, the awards ceremony and Hall of Fame inductions that will go along with that as well. That will be in a month's time. But Dallas Pataska here with 6 laps to go. He's just driven a masterclass, the way he went from 6th to 1st in the opening stint, and the way he just stuck there and stayed there, staying resolute on his strategy.
Yeah, I mean, there's been absolutely no mistakes from Pataska at all, and I know I've talked up Russell for pretty much the entire race, but that's just because the pace was impressive, and I kind of wanted to see someone run Pataska for it. But speaking solely for Pataska, yeah, no mistakes at all. Brought out the pace that we knew he had. It's been a pretty clinical run for him here, and that's what you want. You want to be able to go out there and do that, and fingers crossed for him, he's going to be rewarded with the race win.
Fingers crossed indeed, as they go through and try and get as much as they can out of this. All these drivers know that this is an all-important run. 30 instant points was a DQ here today. They had 1 fast repair available to them if they wanted it, if they got involved in something. They were also set to just 8 tyre sets only over the course of the race, so they had to be careful about how many times they could go to a fresh set as they went about today at Homestead. But 4 laps to go. We look at Adam Thatcher-Ponte now here in 6th position, because behind there's Trevor Vavrovsky, who is just slowly clawing that in. Take a couple tenths out last lap, and he's within range that he might take one away in the final couple of laps.
Yeah, Fassiponte is in that phase of the run where he knows his car's not good, and Vivrovsky and the other TFR cars have really got a very, very potent long-run car underneath them. Now, he looks pretty far back with 3 to go, but it'll only take a little bit of a mistake from Fassiponte to throw that chance there to Vivrovsky.
Well, there's still a chance yet as this race will close itself through. 2 laps to go now for your race leader, who starts lap 266 for Fassiponte. He's got to hold on a little bit more because Trevor Vivrovsky is just slowly clawing his way back up. What was the gaps then? 35.5. It was over the line compared to 35.2, 3/10 of a second. That's in range. Coming towards then what will soon be the white flag lap on the season then, which will be led by Dallas Pataska out there overall as those 2 drivers reach the back stretch. The white flag in the air at Homestead for Dallas Pataska, who will make his way to 1 and 2. His teammate Ryan Walker just in front of him, 4 laps to the good. As he goes through, the gap behind him, 6 seconds to Alexander Russell, who threw everything in that final run, but was just going to be short as they go through. For Pataska, he knows how crucial this race is going to be. He knows how much he's wanted to just end this season fantastically, and he has been perfect through the final season. Dallas Pataska, that is just money. Alexander Russell will wish he never had a penalty. He had a great shot at winning this race otherwise. David Baker will take 3rd, but here comes one Trevor Vivrovsky on the low side as they come to the line. They're going to bump and bang their way over. It's going to be tight between those 2. I think Fassiponte stole it, but by how much, I have no idea. That was so close.
Yeah, it really was. The 10 just didn't quite get the run off of 4 that he needed. He nearly still had it. I was watching the entire last lap. He gained up so much through 1 and 2 to have the opportunity in 3 and 4.
Oh, what an incredible end to that race. They came to the line. There was nothing, absolutely nothing in it as they came through. But there is Dallas Pataska. End of season burnouts, and absolutely deserved on what was a flawless performance here today from number 23. And that's probably about the most deserved title I think I've seen in the major series for a very long time.
I would absolutely agree. He's been the standout throughout the season.
Getting them all in. Get them all in while you can, Dallas. That's a championship well deserved from the number 23. Getting that all sorted and done. We're going to step aside here for one moment, though, with the Global SimRacing channel. We'll bring post-race coverage to you after this from Homestead Miami Speedway.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ride around the world. I'm Mick Claridge, and I'm going to ride around the world on my bike. My son, he gave me advice at the start of this ride, and he looked at me and just said, "Dad, don't be a moron."
Let me do my animal signal to gain their respect.
How's it going, Sally? Yeah, I'm alright, Mick. How's it going? Worse than that bit in Lord of the Rings where they go into the top and the spiders in the tunnel. I'm just hoping there's a spider at the top of this one to kill me.
Freezing. And I failed. I moroned up the ride.
It was a tough race today, a cautionless race for the second time this season when it's come to oval content, but one which for Dallas Pataska's 2 hours, 37 minutes and 11 seconds, he was able to take the victory by 5.2 in the end over a recovering Alexander Russell, who probably needed about 7 more laps today to make that race his. David H. Baker would do the Legends category an absolute treat, finishing in 3rd position, just 14.5 seconds off on a very, very astute day today. Davin Milnarevic would finish 4th after starting on the final row of the grid, with Travis Henderson rounding out then the top 5. Adam Fatcher-Ponti would try and chase that down, but he'd have to deal with Trevor Vavrovsky over the line. Next to nothing between them as they reach the finish, with Gabriel Roos in 8th. Ross Banfield falling back to 9th come the end, ahead of Adam State, who would round out the top 10. The final 2 finishers would be Mark Stevenson 2 laps down. He had the same issue as Alexander Russell today. He had a drive-through penalty on the opening lap of this race for jumping the initial start, with Ryan Walker in 12th 4 laps down. The 2 retirees being Cordell Colon and Tom Dreiling here today in terms of this race. But here at Homestead, it is a victory for Dallas Pataska, who will be joining us now here in the Global Sim Racing Channel commentary booth. Dallas, that is pretty much as resolute, as complete of a performance you could possibly have. A day today for you in which it went cautionless, a day in which today where you drove the majority of the race from the front of the field, and it never looked outside of about lap 50, lap 60, like there was going to be any other winner besides you.
Yeah, it definitely went my way today. Definitely didn't have the car I wanted to load off with, but it was obviously good enough, so that's what counts. And then, yeah, really nice to see we were able to go green the entire way. It's a little bit unfortunate we didn't merge the 2 regions again, but that's all right. I understand why some of those sportsman guys didn't want to, but it is nice to have more than, I think we had 15 cars, but on the other hand, green flag pit stops and everything were a lot of fun to get through, which a lot of these races you don't get to do that. So it was pretty fun overall and a good way to send it off into the off season.
Let's talk tyres, because tyre talk was quite prevalent from us today up here, because it looked like those tyres were going off by about 2 seconds come the end of the run. Just how different is it when you get a lot of these green flag runs to take a car that's, you know, really good over the first 5 laps, you're flying around, then all of a sudden each lap just progressively just slows and slows and slows. What are you looking for out of the car when you're literally searching for grip on the 4 wheels underneath you?
Yeah, pretty much the opposite to what I had on the car today as far as handling. I usually try and, to target these longer runs. I had a pretty good idea we're going to get some longer runs anyway. So it's really just a matter of getting something that is balanced out well, not too tight on entry, not too loose on exit. And I kind of had both of those. So it was a little tricky to deal with, but as the track progressed through the race, it started to come to me a little bit, and was able to work out a little bit larger gap to David behind.
You're champion. You've had to go through some very important races over the course of this season. The question I ask you, though, a lot of drop-off towards the end of the season. That's quite understandable. How would you look at this then as a season, and how would you look at, going into next season and trying to make sure, there's not 14, 15 drivers here come the end of the season just trying to race, and how you or hoping to try and get still 25, 30 drivers to go out there race against you for what will be your championship next year?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it sounds like from what we've been teased at from Mike is that some of these problems are going to be changed due to some upcoming changes in the rules and how that's going to work. So just kind of waiting to see what he presents later today, and we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, I'll be racing. I'm going to try and encourage more people to race the series. I think it's a great opportunity to have some fun and kind of step out of your comfort zone, at least in some rounds. So it's a lot of good fun, and I think Mike and all the guys over there that organize it are going to do a great job again next year.
Well, Dallas, before we let you go, shout out sponsors, anyone you'd like to thank.
Really just want to shout out all the satellite guys that showed up throughout the year. It was a big team effort. Obviously, my primary focus is the driver's title, but right behind that is the team championship, and I'm pretty sure we got that secured today. So that's a big positive. So a huge shout out to all those guys for all their effort.
That's Pataska there, taking Drivers' Championship, Teams' Championship, every championship he could. If he was over 60, he might take the Legends Championship as well to go with it. Christian Schallner now stood by with the driver who finished second overall, and that is Alexander Russell.
Alex, what might have been if not for that first lap penalty? You looked like you had the pace there to beat Dallas, and you came within 5.2 seconds at the end. You were 28 seconds behind after that penalty. You could have won, man.
Yeah, I definitely could have won, which is really disappointing because I went back and looked at the replay and I didn't jump the start. So it's really disappointing because I definitely had the pace to go and win, and strategy ended up being really close. I threw everything I could at him. There was no give at the end. It was all trying to get there, but the strategy was great. I ran as specific of a pace as I wanted. I saved the tires. I had clear advantages on long runs. It just, that first lap ruined it. I'm disappointed, but you just got to take these things and move on sometimes.
Yeah, that is disappointing for sure, especially if, as you say, you did the restart in the restart box and you still got a penalty. I've got nothing for you on that. I'm sorry. If it's any consolation to you, please send me the replay. I can send it to someone to take a look at, and we can work on fixing that. So apologies if that really was the case, because pace wise, man, I was like, we're not supposed to have favorites, but I was pulling for you because I could see that you were just bad fast. I mean, it was like ridiculously quick. Even that first run, you ran Dallas down about half of the deficit. I mean, the strategy. So I'm curious, what made you go for that strategy actually? Because I felt watching that you were actually giving up quite a bit of time, especially in the early runs where you would stay out, and then we knew you were going to have to do the short run at the end. But what was the decision to kind of always go as far as you could on fuel until those last two runs, instead of moving to, say, a 40 lap strategy with about 120 to go? What made you pick the short last two runs?
I just thought that if a caution were to come out at all, it would have flipped the switch completely. It would have been like, well, now the ball's in my court and you guys got to run me down. But as we saw, it was a great race and everyone was able to keep it green, and it was a lot of fun strategy wise. Everyone was working hard to keep their car on track and be clean and respectful, which is something that rarely happens in iRacing. It's super fun to see. But I did consider moving to a shorter run strategy. I just didn't know that they would fall off as much as they did towards the end of the race. I thought that they might pick up some grip with the rubber going down and temps dropping.
That for sure makes sense. I mean, we were expecting to see that as well, kind of as the race went on, that people who were struggling in the early runs would not struggle as much towards the end of the race, and that definitely seemed to be true. But it also seemed like your long run pace was just so much better than the vast majority of the field. It looked like after about 30 to 40 laps of the run, you were kind of lights out. It was going to be next to impossible to catch you. Now, you haven't done that many races this year in majors, but the ones where you have, I feel like you featured at the front. Obviously today you were extremely strong. You got any thoughts about next season? Are you going to come back? Are you going to kind of do a full season?
I mean, it's true, as you saw today, I'm an oval racing specialist, so I try and get to all the oval races. I just missed Martinsville, but I do, if there are some really good oval races, I'm definitely doing those next year, and maybe we'll try and do a road course, because I wanted to do the Grand Prix race, but I got sick, and that's never fun, so I missed it, and a couple more.
Well, we certainly hope that you'll turn up to next season, even if it is only for the oval rounds again, because you do make the racing exciting for us to watch. Now, before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to?
I'd like to give a shout out to Satellite Racing. They did a hell of a job on the team championship, and they show what the bar is in the series. Elliott Sadler Esports, which featured on the majority of my car, they put together this rocket ship of a setup and really supporting my oval racing career and all the viewers and broadcasters who do this stuff. It's super fun to get to pull into the pits after lap one and think, well, this is going to be an interesting storyline to the race, and I'm glad we got to share it with all the viewers.
Yeah, it absolutely was. It was probably the highlight of the race, actually, trying to figure out if you were going to make it or not. And you go back and watch the broadcast, we were talking about it so much because we were really curious as if you were going to be able to overhaul the deficit. But thank you for coming and chatting with us. We do appreciate it. Thanks for sticking it out after the penalty as well. I know that must have been really heartbreaking to have that happen, but you stuck with it and you gave us an amazing race. So we hope to see more of you next season. Congratulations on the really strong pace and the second place.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully we can get one spot more next season. And so
one spot more. That's all that could be asked for there. Alexander Russell finishing second position overall. But that will do it then for this broadcast here from Homestead Miami Speedway. That will do it for the European Majors this season. What an incredible season it's been from all the people who've been working on it, of course, behind the scenes, from Christian, from Zach, of course, Justin not here today, but from the work that's all been done for everyone to get things done. Want to give a massive thank you to all the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast, and they'll be listed up on your screen here right now. And that also includes the music provided by June Lalonde. Her music is absolutely incredible. You can get more of her work if you head over to Bandcamp using the link right there. On top of that, you can find more information about us at globalsimracingchannel.com or through our social media listed on screen. We've got merchandise as well at gsrc.storenvy.com, so make sure you keep an eye out on that as well. In terms of the championship, we won't know anything about it until next season, so keep yourself posted for that, 2023 for that. But it's not the only region that's completing here tonight, because we'll have the Majors Americas region coming up along at 7:25 Eastern. Make sure that you jump over with us then for that. All the other races you can see up there on your screen. Mark them down in your calendar. Make sure you don't miss anything that is coming up. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track next season.